Welcome everyone to episode 3 of the Aspec podcast series, where we're going to be talking about asexuality, the invisible orientation, with Jessica and Mabel Luna today. I'll start by briefly mentioning who I am. I'm Ty Iwai. I'm an NB Aeroace content creator here on Twitch and YouTube. I'm also working on a PhD related to permafrost and climate science, and I have a huge interest in ace and arrow advocacy. So I decided it would be really cool to start, a series here on Twitch, which, is a space where I don't find a lot of discussions about topics related to asexuality and aromanticism for whatever reason, at least not that I've been able to come across. So I thought it would be a real neat idea to organize a podcast style series to chat, in more detail about two orientations that there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions about. So why don't we start with Jessica? Do you want to introduce yourself today?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So yeah, I'm Jessica. I am asexual. I might be demi-romantic. Unclear. We're still kind of figuring that out. But I definitely am not like fully arrow because I actually have a pretty strong romantic drive. But I've only ever dated friends, so that seems to imply
Yeah,
something. Yeah. So
yeah,
we're still figuring that out. But yeah, no, I'm excited to be here today. I am also a chemist, so we met on the Aces in STEM
yeah,
Discord. Um, so yeah, happy to talk about our experiences and sort of the different perspectives on asexuality.
absolutely. And do you want to introduce yourself, Mabel?
Yeah. Wait, Jessica, what were your pronouns? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, she, her.
She, her. Okay, per women in STEM. Okay, per.
Yeah.
I'm Mabel Luna or Mabes. Yeah, I am obviously a streamer on Twitch. I'm a VTuber. I'm Afro Latinas. Uh, I'm also Ace. I'm kind of not Ace Flux. I don't know. There's probably a micro label for me, but honestly, for me personally, I don't get too stuck on micro labels. Um, I am for sure romantic, but I don't know if it's demi, but for sure pan romantic. I don't care what you are.
So
Um,
valid.
yeah, but for my aceness, for sure ace on that one. For sure just ace. Sexual is meh or or gross. It's meh or gross at any given time. So yeah, that's definitely on a flux sliding scale, but I don't know. I don't care too much about all of that. Like, not that I don't care about it, but I don't put too much pressure on myself for labeling it. Um
Absolutely. And that's
yeah.
perfectly okay. And we can, delve into that a little bit more as well
Yeah.
in a few minutes. So,
Yeah.
just to kind of start off, remind folks kind of a broad, I guess, definition of asexuality refers to folks that experience limited to no sexual attraction. And this kind of has evolved from the original definition on the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, also known as AVEN, which defined asexuality as being folks that experience no sexual attraction. So the folks that experience limited to no sexual attraction encompasses the entire asexual umbrella, including gray aces and a bunch of other micro labels. And if you want to learn more about kind of the history of the term, I highly encourage you to take a look at the Aspec podcast VOD channel, which is over on YouTube, and you can learn more about why in the late 1800s asexuality was known as anesthesia sexual. And we had quite the hilarious chat about that. So go check out the YouTube channel. and you can get caught up on the brief history. I didn't go into great detail on it, but we kind of did a brief history from about the late 1800s all the way through until the present day of the term asexuality. Is there anything either of you would like to add to that, Jessica or Mapes?
Nor, I think you did a good job.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect. So let's look at a few kind of labels under the umbrella of asexuality. So during the first episode, we talked about demisexuality, which refers to folks that experience sexual attraction only after they develop a close emotional bond with somebody. Now, the opposite, or something that is often seen as the opposite of that, is phrasexual, and this is a microlabel describing folks that only experience sexual attraction to folks with whom they have no emotional bond with, and then they find that that sexual attraction disappears as they get to know folks better. So sometimes they actually refer to this as the opposite of demisexuality. I know it's not a very commonly used label, but I thought it might be interesting to mention, given we talked about demisexuality in the first episode. And then there's a couple of other interesting microlabels that I thought might be interesting to talk about. Cupiosexual. So this is folks that don't experience sexual attraction, but I think would like to be able to, and I think, that's where the QPO part comes in. They'd like to be able to experience sexual attraction. It's just they happen not to be able to. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Add to it in terms of definitions,
yeah,
or
or
other
just
micro
thoughts.
labels, or
Just thoughts about it. Are you familiar with that label?
I've heard of lithosexual or litho. I've never said these words out loud.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
um, but I haven't heard so much of like phrasexual and stuff. I feel like I hear a lot more about demisexual.
Yes, a much
Um,
more common term for sure.
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I don't know. They're interesting. I haven't heard of all of them before,
Yeah,
so I'm like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
yeah,
same.
fascinating.
There's so many micro labels
Yeah.
I feel under the Aspec umbrella.
Yeah.
But like, and I'm like, I think I'm similar to you, Mabes, where it's like I don't really like dive into it myself. I'm okay with like the word ace for now, at
Yeah.
least.
Yes.
But I think what was useful about micro labels, like when I was first entering the community, was just like being able to read sort of a synopsis of the breadth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely can agree with that. And so lithosexual is another kind of microlabel, and it's someone that may experience some degree of sexual attraction, but does not want that to be reciprocated. The lithosexual person may be uncomfortable with the thought of someone being sexually attracted to them, or they may lose any sexual attraction if they learn it's reciprocated. So this is
I
kind
feel
of an
like
interesting.
I was there at one point in time,
Absolutely.
for sure. Yeah, but I don't know. Like, I guess, how do I? Ow, hitting my elbow on my desk.
Oof.
That's one of those things where I think, how do I explain microlabels? I don't know. I don't want to explain it as like, I don't know. I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but I feel like it's something that it's more common than we think. I think
Mhm.
people think with a micro label, you're only ever that micro label.
No,
But I think it can be part of like a spectrum of ACE,
Yeah.
right?
absolutely.
So you can be like, I know some people that are probably phrasexual, right? Where they're like, oh, strangers. Um, but for me personally, I could never do that, right? So I'm
Yeah,
probably more demisexual, but I don't even count myself as demisexual because does that count if you just made friends with that person? Probably, but I feel like there's always all these gray areas, and
exactly.
the micro labels definitely help to find other people like you, but
Hmm.
I personally don't get too caught up in them.
Absolutely.
Um, like enough to be like, I don't want to hang out with you cute biosexual. And there's so little of us. I just feel like it shouldn't be a border. It should just be like a notch on the spectrum.
Yes.
And
Right, and I think it, like, helps like, find language
yeah.
to describe
Mhm.
your experience, which can be very
Exactly.
helpful. But it can
Yeah.
also change, right? Like, as your own understanding of your asexuality evolves, like, I could
Mhm.
totally see, like, oh, at one point, maybe I was closer to this experience, but now
Yeah.
I'm not, right? So I think that
Hmm.
Yeah.
that's totally valid too. I think using microlabels as a way to define common language is very
Hmm.
helpful, even if you don't
Absolutely.
like identify with it all the time.
Absolutely. Definitely agree. And I would say that myself personally, I found delving into the micro labels to be really helpful to get a sense for just the diversity of
Mhm.
experiences under the asexual umbrella when I first was starting to learn about my own asexuality. And then now that I'm, a little more comfortable with it, I prefer not to use micro labels myself because I don't think there is a particular micro label. They're a rigid box, and no sexuality is a rigid box. So I find that it's easier for
Yeah.
me just to say that I am ace spec or somewhere under the gray umbrella.
Mhm. Yeah. That's why I feel like too another thing with micro labels is, for example, if you're already a person with multiple identities, right? If
Hmm.
I had to sit here and be like, I am a woman, but I go by she, they, and I'm also Hispanic, but I'm also black, like there can
Yes.
be so many labels, and there's like, that's probably
Yes.
not even all of them, right? And then if I have to say 10 ace micro label,
Yeah.
Yes.
like,
So
like,
valid.
you know, like,
Intersectionality.
and it's like, it's important for that to exist, right? It's important for people to be able to speak on those experiences, so to have that language, like you said, is really empowering. But I feel like for me personally, I feel like once you have over like 3 micro labels,
So
it's going to
true.
get really tiring to be like, oh, I'm I forget which one it is, but it's like when you're not fictosexual. I don't know. When you're like sexually attracted to make or not make believe characters, but like
Yeah.
fictional
Yeah,
characters.
that's
Um,
fictosexual.
yeah, fictosexual. So I'm like, yeah, I'm like that, but only for anime men. Like, once you have to like go into all of these micro categories, it becomes more simple to just say I'm ace, right? And then
So
if
true.
someone is aware of those categories or wants to learn about them, then
Yeah.
you could be like, I'm specifically I'm this, or
Mhm.
I feel like it's easier to help them understand what you're talking about if they have no idea about asexuality, if you just open up with
Yeah.
first the big one, right?
Yeah.
Asexual. I'm not a plant. I am
Yeah.
not self-reproducing. I
Yes.
right, and then kind of go into those micro labels as you warm them up to it.
Absolutely. And I can certainly agree with that in that, if I'm talking to folks within the ACE community and, they are interested in finding out, I'll say, there are aspects, say, of egosexuality that that I can relate to, or, I might, you know, apply a certain micro label to, add more context. But personally, I've never found a micro label that perfectly describes how, my experience. So I prefer to more generally just say somewhere under the gray umbrella.
Yeah, valid.
Mhm.
Very, very valid.
So we chatted about micro labels, and I think all of us to some degree found, micro labels potentially being helpful early on.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But, as we became more learn more about ourselves, and, I think later on, I think all of us potentially have found them to be less useful at this point. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it it's kind of like just easier to say gay, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like if someone's like, "What are you in particular?" You're like,
Yeah.
"Gay." Like
Yeah.
like it's just sometimes the umbrella is just a little bit easier, a little bit more
Totally.
simple. Especially like you said, if I'm around a lot of people that are well aware of
Mm-hmm.
asexuality, right? I don't have to explain all these micro labels or use them all the time because they know if I'm like, oh my god, this character is so hot, then they're not like, I thought you were ace, right? Because
Yeah.
they're aware that
Exactly.
that is part of asexuality, or can be part of
Yeah.
asexuality. Um,
Absolutely.
but it is helpful sometimes, if you're around people that aren't that aware. So
Totally.
it's
And
it's helpful, but like you said, yeah, sometimes not too helpful.
Yeah, I also think it can be overwhelming for people,
Yeah.
like because like asexuality is not as well known as being gay or
Mhm.
something like that. Like you're often
yeah.
having to explain asexuality 101 anyway, and
All the
Mm-hmm.
like
time.
all the time. And
So
so like
true.
trying to like then go into the micro, it's like it's too
Yeah.
much. It's too much.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a lot.
So true. And welcome on in, Sleepy Bunny and Asha God. Glad to see you both.
Oh,
Asha was part of the Disability Pride raid train that we just had,
uh-huh.
the Spoon Platoon. So let me give you a
So
shout
cute.
out.
Enchilado. That's one of my favorite Pokemon.
Absolutely, they are a fellow Pokemon content creator, of course. So we chatted a little bit about microlabels and whether or not we find them useful. Why do you think asexuality, or why is asexuality often referred to as the invisible orientation? Any thoughts around that?
So many thoughts, too
Yeah,
many
so
thoughts.
many
Yes,
thoughts. So many
absolutely.
thoughts.
I mean,
Do you
I
want to
think
go first?
yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of them is what we were just talking about, right? Like people don't really know what asexuality is. If you're not like in very queer spaces, like
Mm-hmm.
even my friends, like I have, colleagues or friends who are very supportive, they're allies, they definitely have like taken time to educate themselves on a lot of LGBTQ plus issues, but when I came out as ace there was still a lot of, huh? What is that? And so like I was happy to educate them because I knew that they wanted to know and we're definitely coming from a place of good faith. But like
Yeah.
even people who are like trying to be up on queer identities don't know what asexuality is. And so
Yeah.
that's part of the
Yes.
problem is nobody knows about it. So
Yeah.
therefore nobody talks about it. Like you were talking
Yeah.
like as you were talking about in the first episode, like representation is very far behind. So that's another reason. But
Mm-hmm.
then the third reason is that it doesn't really come up in like normal conversation. So like I have a colleague who is gay and it's like very obvious because he has a same-sex partner. And so like you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to like say it as explicitly because it's like, oh, people know what that means and that's fine. I have another colleague who uses they them pronouns. Very
Mm-hmm.
obvious, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I'm not going to bring up asexuality randomly at work.
No.
Like that's not going to be a thing. And
Yeah. I
so
think
No.
that makes it really
because
hard.
even though it's so funny because I think about this all the time too. Even though asexuality is supposed to be the lack of sexual um ¿cómo se dice? What is that word? What is that
Attraction.
word? Attraction. Thank you, English. Um, supposed to be the lack of sexual attraction. It's still attached to sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
still whether
Yes.
we want to or not.
Yes.
Like being the opposite of sex is still being attached to sex. And
Mm-hmm.
that is not something people talk about all the time.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not something people feel comfortable with all the time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
especially like you said, you're not going to bring that up at work with your
Right.
colleagues. You're not you're not going to be like, "Oh, sorry, I don't personally like pee and vagina." Like that's not something that you're going to bring up in casual conversation with people that are just like acquaintances, or even if they're your friends, like maybe you won't bring it up in
Right.
in public like that. So I think that could be why. It's because it's supposed to be like, in the home business, right?
Mhm.
Sex is supposed to be very hidden. It's a very Christianity country type thing, which that's a whole nother thing.
Oh,
Yep.
But
absolutely.
a whole nother whale. But I feel like that's part of it because it is innately attached, or maybe not attached, but associated with
Yep.
sex. Um
Absolutely.
it's something that people don't want to talk about that much. Or maybe they think something's wrong with them, kind of like disabilities. Like there are invisible disabilities
Hmm.
that still exist even though you can't see them. And I think there was that whole kind of thought that if you are asexual, something happened to you or something's wrong with you mentally. Um, and that's also something that you can't see anything mental, like Jessica said. Like if I have a same-sex partner, it's very obvious. It's like, oh, gay. Like,
Yeah.
but if I have a partner, that is a dude because I look like a woman and I have a partner that's a dude, people are just going to assume that I am straight, right? There's no
Hmm.
Yep.
real,
Yep.
they're not really going to think anything of it, even if we're not having sexual relations, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, they're like, that's something also that if I brought up, like, oh, me and my male partner don't have sex, that could be seen as like, oh, why? Right.
Yeah. So what's
So there's
wrong?
all this stigma. Yeah, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Why?
Absolutely.
What's wrong with you? So it's one of those things where I think that's part of why it's invisible. It's just because
Hmm.
there's so many different areas where it can be stigmatized or
Yeah.
looked down on, or people are just like they don't know, right? Um, and I think that's probably part of it too. It's easier to just like keep quiet and kind of look straight if you have
Yeah.
like a opposite gender partner. Um,
Absolutely.
to just kind of like pass, right? And it's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
and not really have to deal with all of the explaining and the looks and the why and the, well, why can't you just have sex? And Americans too at this point, and maybe a lot of other people, but I live in America, so I will focus on that. Have really tied romance to
Hmm.
sex,
Yes.
Hmm.
like through media, through
Yep.
like especially through media. Oh my goodness, but it's just like romance and sex are almost like treated the same.
They
Like
are.
once you love
Absolutely.
Yep.
someone,
Yep.
you're supposed to bed them.
Yeah.
um and I have a whole thing on that because I was a lit major and romance is literally made up, and I recognize this. But it's so like fascinating that we have just decided to tie it to sex.
Hmm.
um it's just like so much.
So
So
valid.
Yeah. I think in this conversation, we also have to mention the book by Julie Sandra Decker,
Yeah.
called "The Invisible Orientation."
Mhm.
That's where the term was popularized, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
And it's really funny. Like I like that book. I still recommend that book as like a ACE 101 type of thing, but it is a little bit outdated. Like
Hmm.
yeah,
allosexual was not like
yeah,
a term yet, which was very
yeah,
funny to me.
Yeah. So just to, I guess, remind folks what allosexual is referring to, it is folks that experience sexual attraction. It's basically, for lack of a better expression, the opposite of asexuality.
yeah. It's like neurodivergent and neurotypical. There's like
Exactly.
Yep.
always a name for the opposite, right? The quote unquote
Yeah.
opposite expression. So there's asexual and then allosexual, which is so funny because before I knew that was a term, I called them sexuals, right? In disdain. In disdain. I was like, oh, the sexual. And I still do it sometimes as a joke because I feel like they don't mind, right? They don't see, because like if you are sexual, you see sexual as something good, right? Asexuals are people that see it on a scale of eh to eh.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's really funny for me personally. But I haven't met any like allosexual that hates being called a sexual, but I just think it's hilarious. But if you want to know the proper terms, if you want to know the proper terms, Oh my goodness.
Allosexual is indeed the proper term.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. It's good to have that terminology again because it's just easier to talk about. But
Yep.
Absolutely. And it's somebody that's aroace myself, and is been single my whole life except for a very
sure.
brief time period where I attempted,
Yeah.
to be in a relationship which didn't work out. I have, and given that I present extremely masculine, I could very well pass as, heterosexual male if I so chose to do. And so that basically erases my whole identity as a
Mhm.
result.
Yep.
And that's hard. Like, I think I haven't read that book, unfortunately. We'll give it a read after. But having an identity that can feel so easily erased
Hmm.
by who you're dating, I think
Mhm.
it's probably similar to what bi people experience, but
Yep.
again, like they could also date a woman, right? So then it,
Mhm.
or some other
Yeah,
gender expression, and then it's again physical and obvious. But for asexuals, sometimes it just feels like it's so easily erased
Mhm.
that is
absolutely.
an identity, right?
Yeah,
And like it can cause a lot of like mental strife.
Yes.
totally.
um so I think that's part of what hurts about it feeling so invisible, especially if you don't ask other people, you don't meet other people like yourself, you're going to feel like there is something wrong with you.
Yep.
um
Absolutely.
and I and trying to be allosexual, trying to force yourself into allosexualness um is really a bad time for asexuals. And I don't
Absolutely.
know if we're gonna talk about this later, but I don't okay. Oh, this might be another topic for another day. um, personally, it's so funny because a lot of people think it's ironic, but I'm asexual, but I'm very sex positive.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because I'm asexual, not like necessarily because I'm like, yeah, six, it's all right, but because I feel like being informed about
Mhm.
consent, being informed about your voice and like what you want to happen is something that's really important for asexual people, especially when they
Yeah,
feel like they have to conform.
Yep.
And I feel like it could put you in a lot of bad places as well. It could put you and other people in bad places.
oh, for
um,
sure.
so I'm very strongly sex positive.
And
Um,
that is a term, or that is something that we actually discussed a little bit in the first
Mhm.
episode. What is the difference between sex positivity and sex favorability? And those are
mhm.
two terms that are often confused with one another. So, sex positivity,
Favorability is you like it, right? Like you
yeah, so
yourself.
favorability is
Yeah.
about how do you relate to sex yourself.
Mhm.
Favorability is more generally, how do you feel about sex in general? Not for you
Mhm.
particularly, but just
Yep.
sexuality in general.
And it's not just like important for ace people, right? It's important
No,
for everybody.
It's for
exactly.
everyone, for sure,
Like
for
being
sure.
being able to talk about this with some of my allo friends and or family
Mhm.
members or whatever, like people who are supportive, but like once they learn about it, they like a lot of people have told me like, "Oh, this actually makes me think
Yeah.
differently about how I relate to sex even though I
Mhm.
am allo." It's like maybe I don't need to be
It can like
conforming to the
deepen your
societal norm of
Yes.
understanding.
like what it should be.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah. I've
exactly.
had so many friends that are like, wait a second, I think I might be Demi, even though they're still
Yep.
like sexual, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
like Demi asexual,
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
Probably. But they're like, oh, I might be Demi bi, I might be Demi this. And it really, I think, kind of betters how they relate to those things and their own safety
yeah,
in those spaces. And I
absolutely.
love that. I'm like, if you're gonna have sex, but if you're gonna, you should at least like everyone should be consenting and happy
Yep.
and
Yep.
um or even if you're not going to, like you should be able to say no, even if you
Yep.
don't realize you're ace yet, or
Yep.
even if you're not ace, even if you just want to say no, maybe you're not in the mood. Um, so I'm very like a person for that kind of stuff. And I don't know if that's a topic in particular for the podcast series,
Mhm.
but I just wanted to bring that up because I care very strongly for it.
Absolutely. It's so important to discuss. And yeah, we did go into a little bit of detail about sex favorability and sex positivity and their differences. And I very much agree with Sleepy Bunny. Personally, gray ace spec, in terms of my own feelings about it, I'm very neutral myself.
Mhm.
But I'm sex positive. In terms of favorability, I'm sex neutral. So there's kind
Oh
of the
yeah,
difference.
same. I think I'm a sliding scale. Most of the time though, I'm probably
Yeah,
neutral or repulsed. There's like a very small window where hormones come into play
yeah,
and it changes, but besides that, I'm probably pretty neutral or repulsed.
Mhm.
so valid. Absolutely. Did you have anything else to add on, asexuality is the invisible orientation, either Mabes or Jessica?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think we covered it. I think what we've been talking
Perfect.
about is actually a pretty good segue to
Yeah,
the next question.
absolutely. So this brings us to our next topic. When did you
Okay, let me
come to
look at the top.
realize your ace identity, and
Oh, this
how
is a fun
easy
one.
or difficult was it this to figure out for you?
Do you want
I
to go?
kind of
Want me to
want
go?
I kind of want to hear about tighty whitey.
Do you want me to go, or do
Yeah,
I
you?
kind
go.
of want
All
you to
right.
go. Yeah.
So I actually came to figure it out relatively late in life, and I think the
Oh.
fact that being somewhere under the gray umbrella added a little bit of confusion for me, um, because I have experienced some sexual attraction at certain points, and given that, at the time that I was identifying as cis male, I could very easily have, passed as straight. I just thought, hey, I was some straight guy at the time that just didn't really care about sex and didn't want to be in a sexual relationship. And then, I didn't have the language to understand
Mhm.
what is asexuality. There was no representation anywhere that I can recall in school of asexuality. So I was just like, why is everybody so passionate about sexual relationships? I could care less. And it wasn't until my early 30s that I was like, wait a minute, asexuality. I can relate to very many things about this. And, coming to be part of the Ace and STEM Discord server helped a lot. Coming to then join a Ace and Arrow discussion group really helped me learn a lot more about the Ace umbrella. And so I wasn't until about 5 years ago that I realized that I'm under the Ace umbrella personally. So I would say it was rather difficult to come to that conclusion because I didn't have the language until about 5 years ago to explain my experience.
Yeah, that's super similar to my experience as well. I definitely passed as straight for most of my life. Because I have a very strong romantic drive, I was like in serial long-term relationships starting like
Oh, yep.
middle of high school, you
Yep.
know? And it was like everything
Yeah.
was great because it's super like socially acceptable to not want to have sex in high school and like this was
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
fine. And then
Yeah.
college happened
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
suddenly it was like everybody was talking about sex all the time and I was like, "What happened? I thought we
Yeah.
were on the same page."
Yeah.
But for me it was like a little bit more tragic, I guess, because like my rationalization machine is very strong. And so there was always another explanation. So like I
Yeah.
had a very close friend who was sexually assaulted and like I was the one who brought her to the clinic and the police station
Yeah.
and the whatever.
And
So I
you're
was kind
like,
of like,
"I saw how hard it was, so
yeah,
that's why I'm having a
yep,
hard time because I was
yep,
traumatized."
yep, yep,
Yep,
yep.
yep, yep, yep.
All that.
I'm
All
here.
that.
I'm here with you, Jessica. I'm here with you.
Yeah. And so it was just like, like there was always an excuse. There was always an excuse. It's like so easy to just like, nope, this will be something that will happen someday. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. You just keep pushing it off, right? But then it was like always like this sticking point in the relationships. And like, I've had both the experiences of people being like, well, you never loved me because you wouldn't have sex with me, which like felt really
Ugh,
shitty at the time.
yeah,
But also like, I don't blame him because I was like, I
because
did not
that's
have
how
the
Yeah.
they
language to like
yeah,
talk about what was going on
yeah,
like actually. But then I've also had the experience of very supportive partners and who were very much like, I am not going to push you at all. But
Yeah.
then
mhm.
when they do that, now it's like the societal pressure of like,
Oh,
Yep,
oh,
yep,
but you're
yeah.
not
yep,
doing it right.
yep.
Yeah. So we're gonna skip ahead a couple of years of pain and confusion
And
where
suffering.
yeah, literally doing everything I
Yeah.
could possibly think of to quote unquote fix myself, right? Because
Mhm.
the classic asexuality trope of like
What's
you
wrong
feel
with
really
me? Yeah.
broken, yeah,
Mhm.
like you're just like I don't understand why this like doesn't work. I literally
Yeah.
tried everything to fix myself. So like
Yeah.
everybody was like, "Well, have you just done it?" I've done it. I promise.
Yeah.
I've done it. I've done them all. Like,
Yeah.
and so hilariously, how I finally kind of came around to it. So the good side of the story it always starts with D&D with me, always. And so because I'm like a serial relationship person, my D&D
Mhm.
characters tend to get in romantic relationships with people. It just happens. And this happened with a friend who is bisexual and a close friend where, you know, like I felt very comfortable with her. And so after our characters sort of naturally became into a relationship, I was like, hey, can we do some RP for me to like work through some of these quote unquote problems that I have, right? And like we did not push it. It took actually a couple of years to like naturally kind of get there in the relationship. And then when it like finally came up, I was like, I want you to help me fix this. And she was like, this is not a problem. what are you talking about? And I'm
He's
like, no,
like,
you don't
please calm
understand.
down.
I want you to help me fix this. And she's like, no, it's
No.
actually okay. And I was like, what do you mean? And so that was like the first time that somebody had sort of actually taken a step back and been like, is this actually a problem for you though? And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? I don't know. And I like even after that, I had to sit with that for like a year before I actually started identifying as asexual because it was just
Oh
like
my goodness.
so mind blowing and
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
why did no one ever mention this before? Like I am 100% sure that I had heard the term asexuality before and I was like,
And just
glad that
flew
exists
past
for
you.
people,
Flew
you know?
past.
Exactly. Like never thought to like apply it to myself.
Yeah.
So anyway, once she had mentioned it and I sat with that for a long time to kind of like, oh, maybe this is actually a thing. Then
Mhm.
yeah, joining the Aces in STEM Discord and actually like hearing people talk about their experiences was really helpful. And then the nail in the coffin was reading Angela Chen's book Ace,
Mhm.
and particularly the chapter about like the good enough reason.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I read it, I was
Absolutely.
like, this is me. This is all of me. Okay, we're Ace.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great book. If you have not
Great
read
book.
Angela Chen's Ace, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed reading it, and it was really
Yeah.
helpful for me as well. You know, especially being under the gray umbrella with a ton of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Thank you, academia, for that.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting to me because I'm not going to sit here and guess or diagnose nobody, but I
No.
think there is a lot of crossover for ACE and other neurodivergence or
Mhm.
non-binariness, and
Totally
it's
too.
so funny because every single time I talk to someone about aceness, they finally realize it once they've read it and they've taken it outside of themselves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
think it's so funny. I'm like another tally of someone that had to not see themselves in that situation and kind of
Mhm.
Yeah.
look at it from a third kind of point of view to be like, "Oh, wait a
Mhm.
second."
Yes.
But that's just so funny. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
It was really funny. And then like once it like clicked, it was like, wow, my entire life makes sense suddenly.
Yeah, it's like finally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Finally. Oh my goodness. It's so interesting too because my experience is different because I kind of accidentally discovered it for myself pretty early on, but I still went through all the imposter syndrome and all like what Jessica was talking about like the long serial monogamy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So so I mentioned earlier for a brief moment, it's just tiny. I am obsessed with literature. I've been reading romance novels. I'm very romantic. I've been reading romance novels since I can't even remember. So I had a strong grasp of what romance was. And in romance novels, they always call it women's porn, right? So I, I also I had an idea about sexuality as well. But I loved it for the characters, never thought about it for myself. And in middle school, I thought I was a genius because there was no such thing as asexual yet that I had heard of. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, I'm such a genius. A means no or non, and sexual means sex. And I put it together and I was like, I'm a freaking genius.
Heck
And
yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And because I had thought about it and I was like, do I like boys in that way? Like, do I want to kiss one of my classmates? Absolutely the hell not. And then what's the opposite of that? Am I a lesbian? No. So, and then I was like, I guess I don't want to have sex with anyone, not sex, asexual. And I thought it was a genius. And I just sat on that word. And then and a few years later, when I was in high school, I think Avon was one of the first
Yeah.
like online
Yeah.
kind of communities. They were like asexuality coined by this white man, and I was like, impossible.
Yeah.
I
Always.
was like,
Always.
no, I thought of the which I'm sure there was a lot of people feeling the same exact way, but as a young person, I was like, what do you mean? I created this. This is me. This is mine.
Yeah.
Um, but even though I had that kind of moment for myself being like, I don't like men, I don't like women, I still didn't really think that was acceptable, right? I
Mm-hmm.
thought like because I didn't see anybody else like that. And
Mhm.
I had a lot of friends that were gay, that were pansexual, sorry. Um
Yeah.
that so I was like, so clearly one must be
Yeah.
some kind of sexual. And I just have to find out what kind of sexual I am. Even though I figured it out a while ago, but that wasn't good enough.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
so I was in like so many long-term relationships. It was very hard because a lot of those people were allosexual
Mm-hmm.
and like to their benefit, they were trying to experience love the way that is comfortable for them, which includes
Exactly.
sex.
Exactly.
I was like,
Mhm.
why can't we just do it
Yep.
without all this
For
stuff?
sure.
Like I was like, I love the romance part, but then it's like all
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
All
Exactly.
this. And it's like pressure, it's like all this
Mhm.
stuff. And like I'm also a girl, right? And so I was being like a lot of dudes would call me a tease, right?
Ugh.
Um, because they were
Yep.
like, "Oh, you're so cute and so romantic and whatever," but then you don't want to have sex with me.
Yep.
So it was very, I felt very pushed. So this is like
Mhm.
trigger warning, trigger warning. I'm not going to talk about anything in detail, but very pushed to do things I was uncomfortable with.
Yep.
Um, and I also understand like that's from a place of me not understanding myself, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
also no should mean no, right? So v-
Absolutely.
equal parts blame there, okay?
I mean,
So
that's what's so great about Angela Chen's book, right? And her
yeah.
the concept of hermeneutical injustice, right? Of like
Mhm.
the reason that like I didn't say no as strongly, or the reason that it like even if I said yes, it was like
Yeah.
not actually consent
It was not
is
heard.
it's
Like
well, it's
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, like the lack of crucial information and like the
mhm.
Yeah.
existence of asexuality is like so liberating.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And then even when I did try to express because I still knew from a pretty young age that I probably am asexual. When I tried to express that to my monogamous partners, two of them laughed.
Oof.
And because they'd never heard of this thing, right? So they thought I was making excuses. They're also not good people. So mind you, that also has that's also a lot. But they were like, "What are you, a plant?" Right? You know that,
Mhm.
What
"Oh, it's
the fuck?
self-reproducing. What are you,
Ugh.
one
Uh,
single cell amoeba?" Right? All that kind of jokes and not really taking me serious when I'm like, "I think this is my sexuality. I'm
Yeah.
trying to bring this up to you so we can figure out how
Mhm.
my true self is gonna fit into this relationship." And no one was willing to work with me on that.
Ugh.
And like even when I was talking to friends, they were kind of like, "Okay, cool." Like no one around me understood it. Even my gay queer friends, even my non-binary friends, I felt very lost. And it wasn't until like way later in university where it was like I was finally meeting people that were like, "Yeah, I'm demisexual." Like, "Yeah, I can only," and it was
yeah.
closer
Absolutely.
to what I was looking for. I'm like, "Okay, that's kind of what is getting there."
Mhm.
But
Totally.
that's why I'm so like so very asexual and loud about it and so because I feel like mm, like, I don't know, I don't like to generalize, but I will speak from my experience. But I imagine for tight E white E, it's a little bit easier to go later on in life without doing anything because you're a dude, you see. You have choice. um, but for me, I felt very forced in relationships to do things because usually the guy steers the relationship, right? Quote unquote. This is all like not really true, but back in my day,
It's like the
um,
societal norm,
yeah, the societal
or
norm,
the
exactly.
expectation. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like if the dude wants some, you're supposed to give him some, and if you don't, you get a really bad reputation, especially like in high school or something when you're kids and nobody knows anything. Um, and so it's like really, I feel like dangerous for anyone, man, woman, non-binary, anybody, to like feel forced to do anything,
Absolutely.
comply with anything. And like that's why I'm like so extra strongly ace out loud. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I make all these perverted jokes. Yeah, I talk about PPs.
Mm-hmm.
But like this is coming from a place of like you should know like everything that you need to know to feel comfortable within yourself and
Definitely.
to like really live as your true self and not, I don't know, feel the need to be anything else. I feel like I was trying to be something else for so long, and then I was like, you know what? Let's just keep with the A and the asexual.
Yep.
Let's just go. And like I've had some partners tried to acquiesce, right? I've had some partners try to like maneuver around, but I think it's still hard when it's like an allo
Mm-hmm.
person and an asexual person.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like there's still like a lot of difficulties there sometimes. So I think for me, I'm probably just gonna look for a like uh what is that called? Like a queer platonic relationship.
Heck yes, that's what I want. I want a
Me,
queer platonic
that's what I want
relationship.
so bad. I'm super down to just like live with my friends and marry my friends and just
Yeah.
like not really and just have like 10 of them. And then and then have like one or two romantic partners and then one sexual like I was like one sexual dog somewhere, not an actual dog, obviously, like a person. But I feel like that is the best. That would be the best scenario for me where I live with like five friends, we're all like platonically like involved, and then like two romantic relationships, and then just like far, far in the distance, like
Heck
one
yeah.
sexual person
Yeah.
for once in a blue moon.
Yeah. And I can say that with my relationship, it was very much my partner that was always asking, so, do you want to have
Oh,
sex? And I
Jesus.
was just like, no, I really
Yeah.
don't. But
I feel
I
like
gave in
oh,
because that's what I felt like she
yeah,
wanted.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was
There's so
like,
much pressure.
yeah.
Like
Mhm.
and also I feel like a lot of this is just me psychoanalyzing allo people. No offense, sorry, allos. But I feel like a lot of worth is placed on sex. And I feel like that affects us too because we don't want to or we're unable to, we feel unworthy as well.
Mm.
But I feel like people when they are like you won't have sex with me, you hate me, you don't
Yeah.
love me, like
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
strange. And maybe that's the asexual in me talking again. I just feel like it's so strange that there's so much self-worth placed on
Mm-hmm.
something that can change. Like you could take a medication and your sex drive can change. I just don't think so much self-worth
Absolutely.
should be placed on it. But again, maybe that's just the asexual talking. I don't really know about that. But
I do want to address a few of the comments here in the chat, and I would definitely agree, Sleepy Bunny, that the younger generation, that grew up with Avon and the term asexuality, being
oh
a
yeah.
little more known, I think has more easily adopted the language, and
Mhm.
compared to the early millennials like me who hadn't even heard of a term like it until I came across it in my 30s.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a big reason why it never had occurred to me that there was such an orientation until much later in life. But I
Yeah.
do recommend looking up How to Be Ace by Rebecca Burgess if you have not read it or seen it. It's a great comic series that describes
Mm.
asexuality in sort of a short comic.
That's cute.
It is super cute. Welcome on in, Grandpa. How are you doing today? I'm doing fantastic. It's been really wonderful to be chatting both with Mabes and Jessica about the invisible orientation, asexuality.
I also think it's fascinating, like the differences between the romantic and the aro.
Yes, absolutely. And being
The
somebody that's, aromantic myself,
mm,
I figured out asexuality, and then the partner that I had, I never really, I think I was performing romance. I was like, okay, what is
mm,
it that they want? What is it that I'm
mhm,
supposed to do to be romantic? What is it? What is
mm,
romance? I never, really understood it. And so I did all these things that I thought, I had to do to, support my partner at the time, but I never really saw anything in it. And then after the fact, I'm like, oh, wait, maybe, and then I came across the term, maybe I'm aromantic. And
mhm.
then I clued in and I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. I think it's just so, like, again, like the idea that we have of love is so made up. And like you were saying, like, I felt like I was performing romance, but
Hmm.
romance is performed. It's just
Wow.
a set of agreed upon societal customs,
Hmm.
right? Like we're supposed to go on a date and we're supposed to kiss and hold hands. But I'm sure like you like people.
I do.
Like you probably enjoy hanging out with people.
I
You
do.
probably have really freaking close friends. But some
Absolutely.
people don't consider that enough
No,
like to be love, right?
exactly.
And I just think that's so interesting. I think all of it is very interesting. Like I don't know.
Absolutely.
Like I wish I could study it, but I don't have time. I'm trying to figure out my master's.
I mean, that's why I love doing my discussion group so much. The
Mhm.
Ace and Arrow discussion group that I run in person once a month. It's given me that
Ooh.
time. It's given me the ability to do this research, to learn a lot about, asexuality, aromanticism, queer platonic relationships, amatonormativity, all of these terms, and chat
Yeah.
with so many people. And, this is what one of the things that inspired me to start this podcast series was all the work that I've been doing, with the local 2S LGBTQIA plus organization that I volunteer with. And now, as of today, am a paid co-facilitator for. Yay!
Ooh,
Nice.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so they
Oh
finally
yeah.
found some funding to
To pay the
pay
people in
us.
it.
Yeah. Welcome on in,
Nice.
Caber. Good to see you.
Is this Saber or
Caber.
Cyber or
Caber.
Caber?
Yeah, Caber was a guest
Yeah.
in our last episode when we were talking about
Yay.
aromanticism. We had a really good chat about, what is aromanticism? What are the many, many, many misconceptions about aromanticism? Because, it's
Yeah.
really not well understood
I
in
think people think
society.
you're robots. I don't know.
Exactly. That's the
It's
stereotype.
so
Oh, you're
strange.
aromantic.
Yeah.
You're cold. You're a robot. How dare you?
Yeah.
You're a horrible human being. But that's not it at
Interesting.
all. I just don't, in my case, I think, one of the labels that could fit is what the fuck romanticism? It's like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is romanticism?
Yeah.
What is it? I don't really understand this. I'm not cold. I have a lot of,
Yeah.
a
You're
lot of
sweet. A honey
connections that I've forged through many different spaces, the Ace and Arrow discussion group, online in the Aces and STEM Discord. I have a lot of, connections. They're just not romantic ones. And what people don't understand is that, oh God, you have to be lonely. Maybe you just haven't found the right person. No, that's not the case. I'm not lonely. I'm actually happier than
You're
I've ever been
vibey. Yeah.
Mhm.
now that I've come to understand who I most authentically am. And hearing things
Yeah.
like, oh, you just haven't found the right person. No,
Ugh.
that's not the case.
Why
That
is that
drives me
always
nuts.
everyone's first? Like,
Exactly.
whether you're gay, whether you're ace, why is that the
I think the thing that I've learned is like believe people when they tell you something
Yeah.
about themselves.
Yes,
They know
Yes.
themselves better than you know them.
Yeah.
exactly. Stop with the gatekeeping.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's so funny.
Yeah,
I don't know why that's the first thing. Oh, you'll find some. Maybe I don't want to.
Right. Yeah, and
Like,
the assumption that everybody wants to. It's like,
yeah.
no, that doesn't have to be everybody's goal. It's fine if it's
absolutely.
your goal, but you don't need
Yeah.
to push that goal on everybody else that you meet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so true. And I'm just going to get caught up on the chat here. Um, yeah, absolutely. You know, society has this nasty wrap around us. You know, it has this assumption that all relationships have to be, you know, everybody has to be in the
Yep.
relationship, which the relationship being romantic and sexual. And if you're not, well, then who are you? You must be
Yep.
lonely.
Yep.
And that's so, so wrong. You know, that's the heteronormative, amatonormative, all the itives that I
Yes.
absolutely hate.
Yeah.
And we will be getting into amatonormativity as its own topic, you know, later on in this series. But just generally
Yeah.
speaking, amatonormativity is the assumption that everybody desires to be in a coupled romantic relationship. And it's if you're not in a coupled romantic relationship, then what are you doing with life? And that is so, so problematic on so many levels.
Yeah.
Because what about poly folks?
Mhm.
They don't want to be in a monogamous coupled romantic relationship. Is there any problem with that? Heck no. It's consensual. Why does it have to be monogamous? Why does it have to be romantic? Don't get me started on that because I could spend like 3 hours
Oh
ranting
no,
about it.
Yeah,
I
that's
could
gonna be a really
just
good
spend
episode. Like,
3 hours.
dive deep into that.
Oh my god, I want to talk about it so bad. I want to talk about, bro. I want to talk about it so bad. You don't understand. Like 18th century literature has fucked the entire
So,
world
so much. So
so
true.
much, and it's, you know what? Okay, I will shorten it. TLDR. It is just to force people into marriage.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
when I say people, I mean women, and it's so. Anyways, I could talk about it forever.
Absolutely. There's this huge aspect of control behind it
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And
It
it's
was just
disgusting.
made to have a standard courting system so that
Yep.
women wouldn't be upset with being bought and sold. And that's not a very cute idea of love, is it?
No, absolutely not. That is
It's
not love.
not. Yeah. But I mean, it's evolved obviously and like changed, but I just, ooh,
Oh, I can totally relate to with what Grappa's saying here. My everybody in both my grandparents have been after me so many times. So when are you gonna
Oh
find a
yeah.
girlfriend? And so
Ugh.
far, I've been able to use the well. I'm still in my PhD.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
maybe think
I
about
was
it
so,
later
I don't
because I'm
even
not
have
out to
time,
them.
you know?
Exactly, because I am not out to my grandparents, nor do I think I
Mhm.
ever will be, because I don't want to get into the details. Because A, I don't think
Mhm.
it's important, and B, I don't know if they appreciate or understand it. So it's
Yeah.
easier just to play the delay, and then not talk about it game,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I used to just tell my parents, like, "Oh, I have a boyfriend. Oh, we broke up. Oh, I have a boyfriend. Oh, we broke up." Like, even when I was single,
Easier just to
because I'm
lie.
like,
Easier just to lie, unfortunately.
it really is. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I think parents, it's just hard because, like you said, information changes
Yeah,
with times, right? And um it was harder for you even to
yeah.
identify your own self. Like, how am I supposed to explain to my parents that
Yep.
I don't like anyone? And no, it's not because I'm picky, and no,
No,
it's not because I'm a bitch. It's
no.
just it's just that I don't want to. Like,
And why is that a problem?
yeah. I always use this example when I'm explaining to people. I'm like, I like pie, right? I
Mm-hmm,
like pie. Maybe you like pie. Maybe you're
mm-hmm.
allergic. I don't know. But I don't want to eat pie every day,
No,
right? And sometimes I will eat pie every day. I will be that maniac and I will eat pie every day. But there are some times where I'm like, you know what? Never mind.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to have other food for 6 months, and then maybe one day I'll have pie, and then I'll
Yeah.
go another 6 months, and and that's just how I am. Like everybody else will eat pie on their own schedule.
Absolutely. And Caber brought up a really good, was it Caber or Busby? No, I think it was Busby actually mentioned
Busby's
the
here.
Busby is amazing. Actually, go follow
I
them
love
if you
Busby.
aren't already, because they are a fantastic ace content creator. But they brought up a really good point, and it was kind of the metaphor of being hungry for, I guess it could be pie,
Or cake,
versus or
or
cake or
yeah.
whatever, versus wanting it. So you're hungry
Yes.
and you'll eat pie or you'll eat
Right.
Yeah.
cake to fill your stomach, but it's not that
Yeah.
you're hungry for pie and
Or
are therefore eating it.
yeah. Or you
So
can want it, but
yeah,
that's not what your body needs. Your body needs,
exactly,
I don't
Yeah.
know, rice and salmon or something. Like it's
exactly.
I think doing it with food is such a good example because it's something that everyone can relate to and is seen as a human need, right? And for some reason sex has also been equated with a human need, maybe
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes it produces children. But
Mm-hmm. Don't get me started on that.
yeah.
And same with
Same.
yeah. And Warrior for Life 9761 also mentioned, Robert, their husband, asked, "So when are we having kids?" And it's like,
Ugh,
just leave me the fuck
oof.
alone. There's
Yeah.
whole, other things going on. Why do we have to
Ooh,
have kids?
Bunny also had a really good example. I used the flower method. You see this flower, your favorite flower? Do you want to fuck that flower? No? Yeah,
That's
I've done
amazing. I love
inanimate
it.
objects as well because people, I think, can understand just how silly it sounds, right? To be like,
Absolutely.
well, oh, everyone wants to have sex all the time. You might want to fuck a flower, but I for sure don't.
No.
To be honest, I don't.
And there's a
And
difference
yeah.
between aesthetic attraction and sexual
Yes.
attraction. You can find
People don't
something
understand that.
absolutely beautiful. Doesn't mean you're going to want to fuck it, does it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
difference there.
Right. And I appreciated that on the previous episode, you also talked about like the difference between libido and
Mm-hmm.
sexual
Yes.
attraction and
Yes.
action. Like all those things are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
very,
welcome on
yeah.
in, Retro Gaming. I'm glad you could make it as well. So
Yeah.
true. Yeah, the whole libido versus attraction. It's like,
Yeah. Or even
asexuality.
arousal. Like
Yeah.
arousal does not mean attraction either.
That's the
Exactly.
other thing. People are like, "Oh, asexuals don't get aroused. Asexuals don't do this and that." I'm like, first of all, clearly you don't know any asexuals because
No.
they're the most perverted, sick people. Like, I know so many monster fucker asexuals. Don't talk to me about asexuals don't want certain things. Okay. Oh, we're
It's a
getting raped.
spectrum as always, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Welcome on in,
I'm so
Raven.
sorry. Let me tell you why you need it. No, I'm so sorry.
It is all
Oh my,
good.
I'm so
It makes
sorry.
for some really hilarious content.
Oh no. Oh hey.
Hey yo, welcome on in, Raiders.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm cursed. I'm so cursed.
I would agree. I
But
make all sorts of, you know, nasty sexual jokes. That's why my channel is 18 plus. It does not
yeah.
change the fact that I'm ace.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't, and also I find asexual people just think a lot of the time as sex as funny, or like
Exactly.
we don't think about it so serious.
Exactly.
Um
To me, it's just
because
hilarious.
yeah, because okay, when people used to like in high school be like, "Oh my god, I'd fuck her." I'd be like, "Oh, me too." I did not understand that
Nerd.
you actually
yeah.
want to do things to this stranger. Like off of just looking at, I thought it was jokes. I thought it was jokes,
Exactly.
and I
I
don't
feel
know.
like that's such like an ace experience
It
of
really
like I have
is.
aesthetic attraction. And I'm equating my aesthetic attraction to sexual attraction and being like, wait, what now?
Yeah, I've been there before too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for the raid, Raven. How was the rest of your stream, by the way? Another Aspec content creator themselves.
Were
They
they
were
on
part
the
of the
Ace raid
Ace.
train?
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of the
yeah.
Ace and Arrow raid train back in June.
I love that. I'm like monster fuckers and people come in. I'm so sorry.
Hey, it made for a hilarious moment. There's going to be all sorts of hilarious shorts coming out of
Oh
this
my
episode.
goodness. But oh my god. But I really do think like ace people, they're like you said, it's a spectrum. There are so many different types. I think it makes us fun and awesome.
Exactly.
But it is just like
But
I
it's
don't know.
also
It just
fine for like the aces who are very repulsed by talking about
yeah,
Absolutely.
sex, or like, you know, like
exactly.
it's like
Exactly.
it's such a spectrum. So it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
don't make assumptions
No,
based off of how people talk or things like that,
exactly.
right? Like actually have that conversation with
Yeah,
somebody.
Yeah.
exactly. Some
I think
aces are, sex repulsed. Some are,
Yeah.
some aren't.
yeah.
Some make
Yeah.
really crude sexual jokes, like myself. There's a
I
whole
do the same.
diversity.
But if you try to yeah.
And I actually know sex repulsed folks that will make crude jokes because
Yeah.
it's so foreign to them.
It's funny. It's funny.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm sometimes very sexually repulsed and I like that's really hard in relationships where people have never experienced their own partner that's supposed to love and be attracted to them, be repulsed by their
Mhm.
attempts, right?
Absolutely.
It's really difficult. But I will make all the dirty jokes because I think it's funny. And I also just like I don't think I realize how serious people are when they say these things either.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but apparently that might be the tism. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, yes. There is a
I
big,
have been
massive
peer
overlap.
reviewed. I have been peer reviewed by like 5 people.
There's
And I'm
such an
like,
overlap.
oh no.
Yeah, such an overlap between the ace and also arrow communities as well, and
Mhm.
the neurodivergent communities for sure.
Mhm.
A lot of
Yeah.
overlap.
Yeah. Oh yes, I have fully embraced the tism and I'm vibing with you. God damn it.
We were all talking about that in episode 2 as well. All 3 of us were NB ADHD arrow aces. So we
Oh
definitely
goodness.
got the whole
The whole shebang.
whole shebang there for sure.
Yeah. I just think it's super interesting. But and I realize too, it's probably it's not everyone that's ace is going to be autistic,
No,
and not everyone
absolutely
that's
not.
autistic is going to be ace and
Exactly.
everything. But I think the
Absolutely not.
crossover
It's a
is
lot.
quite entertaining. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh
There's
my
so much
goodness.
overlap. And just in
Mhm.
general with the broader 2SLGBTQIA plus community as well, there's a lot of neurodivergent folks
Mhm.
within the broader community as well.
Mhm. I was
Yeah.
gonna say too, for well, tell you why. Well, I guess there's not a lot of ace women in media, anyways. But I was gonna say the only older guy that I know personally, even when I was younger, that people debated is he gay, is he ace, is I forget his name, but he's on this fashion show that my mom used to watch on like what is it THC or whatever? It's like this. Oh my god, not Dress to Impress. That is a video game. I want to find him. I feel like maybe someone knows. It was a really it was like a fashion show where he's like make it work. Like if you're gay, please help me. I'm trying to think of his name. I can't remember. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna type in make it work. White guy. See. Make it work.
I think there's a term for that. I think it's a is it a quintuple A battery or something like that, Sleepy
Well,
Bunny?
wait, what is that for?
So there's the triple A battery, which means that you're ace, arrow, and agender. And then if you've got, ace, arrow, agender, autism, and ADHD, there's the
Oh. Oh my
uh,
gosh.
what is the like? There's a triple A, there's a quadruple A, and then there's like a quintuple A. So I think you might be a quintuple A battery there, Sleepy Bunny.
Triple A battery. A. I forgot there was like talks about SpongeBob being ace or gay. What is? I'm trying to remember his name. Such a bad gay person right now. What's happening? Oh, oh, okay, this guy. What is his name? Ooh, who are you? Celebrities who are asexual. I think there's literally only this one dude who's Tim Gunn. Tim
Yeah.
Gunn. Oh my gosh. Okay. Gosh. Oh, he's an author too. Per. What was the show that he was on?
Big win, Sleepy
Project
Bunny.
One Way. Project One
Yes,
Way.
that makes so
Yes.
much sense.
Okay, yes. If you guys don't know Tim Gunn, please type into Google Tim Gunn, Project One Way. He's just like this really nicely dressed, elderly white guy. And that was the only ace person that I knew that was an actual human for like most of my life. Oh my goodness. That took so long to get there. Jesus.
And I think, before I realized my NB identity, I use they them pronouns, but
Mm.
I'm very mask presenting, and I think, the folks that are mask presenting tend to be a minority in the ace community,
Mhm.
because mask presenting folks are supposed to be so horny and
Oh,
sexual.
that's yeah, that's true.
And
That is
if you
the
aren't,
idea.
then, well, what's wrong with you is kind of the impression society has.
Mhm. I think it's harder too for like mask presenting people because it's just like a lot of women or femme people, like we embrace kind of a little bit more queerness or
Yeah.
like in our relationships with each other, right?
Yep.
And so I think it's a little bit easier to embrace that than it is
Mhm.
for mask presenting people. And
Absolutely.
I feel like that's so unfortunate. It's like one of those parts of the patriarchy that's like you kind of shot yourself in the foot. But it's like,
Well,
Yeah.
very much so. Like, yeah, like women and femme presenting folks are definitely, it's more socially acceptable to like be quote unquote emotional or like talk about your emotions or your identities or whatever, like just with
Mhm.
friends, which like
Hmm.
allows you to like explore it more for sure.
Absolutely. It's very much, very much not socially acceptable if you are socialized as male to do that,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
right.
And
just
it's
think,
so sad.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very it's one of those things where it's ¿cómo se dice? Hello? Why is English so hard today? It's like a never ending cycle where people like as a mass person you're not really like they're like you're not supposed to talk about your feelings, right? So then you
Yeah.
don't talk about your feelings, so then you don't have people to talk about your feelings with, and then
Yeah.
you get older and then you finally talk about your feelings but you have no one to talk about it with, and then it just kind of like keeps going, like, and of course you can work to break that, everybody can work to break any cycle, but it's
Absolutely.
just so unfortunate when it could have just been stopped if it's like you're allowed to talk about serious topics with your guy friends. You're allowed to
Hmm.
cry. You're allowed to,
Hmm.
like it would be so much easier to get there.
Yeah. And I've,
But
for a long time, been very open about my feelings. And,
yeah,
so I don't fit those stereotypes at all.
yeah. That's hard too, because then you're isolated for not fitting the
Yeah.
scare. It's like you can't win.
No.
Yep.
It's so hard. Oh, femme people are supposed to be soft and elegant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what does elegant mean? That's a whole another thing.
That's a whole
As
can of worms
that's
for
a
sure.
whole that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, what are we at in terms of topics? So we spent a lot talking about, how did you realize your ace identity? How easy was it to figure out? I think we talked a little bit about representation in media, but I don't think we explicitly talked about it. Maybe
Mhm.
this is a good time to segue into the topic. ace representation in media, and why is it so bad in mainstream media?
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I think a lot of people just don't know about it, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
so writers and stuff like aren't they like it's just not on anybody's radar. But I do think that in recent years there's kind of been at least a little bit more of
Yeah.
like ace creators making what
mm-hmm,
they want to see, and therefore
yeah,
if you're looking for it, there is something out there, which
yeah,
is better than nothing.
yeah,
Yeah. Also think like it's unfortunate, but again, it's just like because love and sex and like kissing and all these
yeah,
things are tied so closely together. For
yes,
example, for plots for movies,
yeah,
they're because they don't understand what Ace is, what Ace looks like, they're gonna think
mm-hmm,
it's boring if
mm-hmm,
there's
Yeah,
no love, right? There's
right.
no
yeah,
love, no sex. They're gonna be like, "What are we supposed to do? Like,
yeah.
just have them eat food?" Like,
That's
like
a
I
very
they
good
don't know
point.
what it looks like. They don't know what it
Yeah,
Yeah,
looks like. How can we make this entertaining? And it's
yeah,
like it looks like everyone else, right?
yeah.
Except for sex sometimes. Like
yeah,
and so why it's just it's one of those things. It's like
But
yeah.
then
just
just
try.
yeah,
I remember reading something about like how the trend in like superhero movies, for example, was actually like good in that it showed that not every movie needs to have the like romantic plot in
Yeah.
order to be
Mhm.
successful.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe there's
It's
a
because 'cause
reason
they're
I like
blowing shit
superhero
up.
movies.
Yeah, they're just blowing shit up and they're like, "Ooh, that's entertaining." But for like, why can't we have those like teen movies where
Yeah.
one person is actually just Ace,
Yep.
and that be the main character and that be something that's okay and there's no, but it's because people don't know how to write that. People don't know what it looks like.
Yep.
And I think it does help when we have more ace creators doing
Yep.
stuff and getting to those places and having our stories more out there, um so that people do know what it looks like and see how fun it is.
Yep.
absolutely. And I think, as you were mentioning, it's the lack of understanding of the split attraction model, which
Yeah.
is not well known outside the Aspec community. So, just to remind folks, the split attraction model, as it's sort of defined on Avon, focused originally on the splitting apart romantic attraction from sexual attraction, um, so that folks may experience romantic attraction and not sexual attraction. They may experience neither, like myself, or they may experience sexual attraction but no romantic attraction. Society, and especially in movies, equates romance and sex together.
Yep.
So in order to not have either of those, you have to be, in order to be ace, you have to be arrow ace and have, cold robotic feelings, apparently.
Yeah.
And so the only way that, for the longest time, any ace characters were coded was through, the arrow ace lens where they don't want anything.
They're like stoic, the
Yeah,
robotic
Mhm.
exactly.
people.
And what
It's so
complicates
silly.
things is that just because you're asexual doesn't mean that you won't have sex. And so that's a really tricky nuance, I guess, to get across in mainstream media, especially if you don't know what asexuality is.
Mhm.
So I think, there's a lot of things that have definitely added to the complexity, especially for a mainstream audience who doesn't understand the nuances of the ace umbrella.
Yep.
I just don't think it would be that hard to make media.
No, absolutely not.
Like, I just don't understand. But it is, like you said, like, they just don't understand the intricacies of it. And it is, again, like one of those things that's part of like why
Yeah,
it's visible and
yeah,
it's just hard. Because if we don't have media of it, more people don't know. Right. And thankfully, I think now it's easier to come across different kinds
yeah,
of media and like self-made, like small creators and
yes,
TikTok and all that stuff. So it's easier for people to see what Ace can look like.
exactly.
um, so that's nice. At least like the common person will have a little bit more of an idea.
Yeah.
Or even if like, because TikTok is literally for you, so if it
Hmm.
has any inkling that you're ace, you're gonna get ace content, which is good.
Hmm.
But it's like I can smell the ace on you. And that's good because they'll be led to those communities
Mhm.
that can help you feel less alone and everything like that. But it is, and I think there's more writers too that are our age and coming out and writing like romance novels that about an asexual person or
Hmm.
even about an arrow ace person. I think I've
Yeah.
seen some.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
haven't read any yet because I have a long to read list, but
Yeah.
I'm getting there. But yeah, I
Absolutely.
think it's getting better. It's for sure getting better. So that's always nice.
Yeah, it's also
Absolutely.
nice to like see books and stuff where the like their asexuality is not actually the centerpiece, right?
I
Yes,
was
They
it
just
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 want to
about to
have
mention
happens.
that.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think we need both, right? And
Yeah.
so I think like I've definitely read some like ace romance novels, like the Aces in Love series by Elin
Mhm.
Annalise. There's I have 3 of those which I've read, and that actually is a really good intersection of disabled aces and stuff. So that's great. But then I've also read like other books where it's like, oh, the character is ace, but it actually has nothing to do with that, which is also refreshing to be like, it doesn't need to be the center. It's just a part of who this person is.
Absolutely. Because originally it was if you were ace, you were only arrow ace, and that was the only thing that was
Yep.
ever important about you. It was very one dimensional. And I think you're starting to see a lot more books in particular where that,
Yep.
you
Mhm.
have cases where a character happens to be ace, but that isn't the main point of the story. And that's really
Mhm.
important too, to kind of uh, get across that, hey, you can be ace and something else. You don't just have to
Yeah.
be ace.
And I feel
Yeah.
like usually aces actually have lots of very diverse interests, like,
Yeah,
Yes.
and to be very hobbyist and stuff. So like
Mhm.
absolutely.
it shouldn't be hard to represent that in media,
Yeah.
but apparently here we are.
And I think it's really cool too. I've seen a lot of ace like centered or where it's kind of like you can kind of tell, right, as an ace that
Mm-hmm.
the character might be ace in video games.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like lots of demos for like really cute games. There was one game I played, or the demo was out, I think like last year or something. It's called I Want to Be Single. And it's a dating game. It's a dating sim. And you're like, what? But it's like I think it's a non-binary character or a girl, I'm not sure. She's
Heck
surrounded by all these
yes.
that are obsessed and they want to date her. And she is trying to run away from them and trying
Oh,
to survive
That's
the
amazing.
school because she's like, "Stop, I don't want to date any of you." And they are chasing after them. They're NB. Okay, okay. I thought so. And they're just like chasing after them, like, I date me or die. And I just think it's so good. It's so good. If you guys like, I think it's like a fun
yeah,
way to have like a twist on a quote unquote dating sim. There's
Yeah.
someone that doesn't want to date, and it's
absolutely.
funny. It's like really cute. It's I don't know. I think
So
we're gonna see hopefully more things like that.
are they arrow ace then? Are they aromantic?
I think they're arrow ace, but I'm not. I don't think it's been like
It's not, yeah,
full.
it's not
Let me
always
see.
clear.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the synopsis.
I will definitely have to check that out.
It's
Yeah,
a really cute game. Let me
definitely.
see. I remember playing it, but I don't remember the synopsis that well.
So is it called
But
Sucker for Love?
no, there's a lot
Oh,
coming out,
okay.
which is why I'm happy. The one that I think it's called I Don't Want to Date or I Just Want to Be Single. It's one of those. The demos are out for it, I think, but they still haven't like officially released that I know of because if they have, I would have played it. I would have gotten a notification from Steam. But and it's like a visual novel, I think. It's like a visual novel dating sim type thing, which is really funny because that's the layout of the usual dating sim. And they're just running away from all these different kinds of potential love matches that are not all there.
I can relate to that so much, Sleepy Bunny. I just want to be single is a mood. I
um
actually had a really interesting discussion with the Ace and Arrow group I run with some of the folks, and we talked about how do you define yourself? Do you define yourself as single? Because, you know, especially in the aromantic community, single suggests that you're open to being at some point in a romantic relationship. You know,
Like
it's
quote
got
unquote whole.
got the
Yeah.
shebang there.
Yeah.
But what if you never want to be in a romantic relationship? Are you still single then? Or, you know, what do you prefer to be called? And we got into some really interesting discussions about, you know, whether or not you prefer to use that term or not because of the connotations that it might bring. So definitely lots to talk about. That could be a whole episode, I think, on
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. I think that could probably go into the one about love as well. Like there could be a
Absolutely.
question or something.
Totally. That's a really good point. I should actually add that one for the discussion for that particular episode. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do you have any other examples of good representation of asexuality in any sort of media that you'd like to highlight? Books, we've talked about some video games as well. We've talked about Angela Chen's Ace. We've talked about How to Be Ace by Rebecca Burgess. I think you've mentioned a couple other books as well, Jessica.
Yeah, definitely Ace by Angela Chen, I think is still my favorite Ace book. But the other one that I really like, kind of on the informational side, is Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Sharona J.
Yes,
Brown.
really good one.
So good. I need to reread that book, actually. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I read it like when it first came out, and then I was like really excited, and then I haven't read it again. So I feel like
still want to read that. I haven't had an opportunity. I tried to look it up recently, but it wasn't available in audiobook format, which is how I prefer to get my
I have it on
books.
Audible, so it definitely is.
Not in my library because I didn't have the money to buy it.
That's fair. That's fair. But that's a really good one from like an informational standpoint as well.
Yeah.
Other fiction books, I think last time you talked about Love List by
Yeah.
Alice Othman, so that's a good one. Funeral Girl by Emma Oland.
I have not read that one.
Yeah, that's like one of those where it's like the fact that the main character is Ace is like a total side thing, but it's like but it's like a cute story. So there's that. This Doesn't Mean Anything by Sarah Whalen is another one that I've read.
Make a note of some of these.
Yeah, I just like went to my bookshelf and I was like, what Ace books have I read recently? What else? I try to back like Ace Kickstarters and stuff like that. So there are always things coming out by Ace creators if you're like looking for it. And then I think this was mentioned on the previous episode as well, but like Dimension 20 is a D&D show that has some Ace characters throughout, which is nice. There's also a very Ace phobic scene in one of their seasons, which I was very upset about. But other than that, they actually they're usually very good about it. There's just like one scene that's not. And so,
no.
Yeah. But in general, I think that like D&D is generally very queer friendly, so there's a lot of Ace characters in actual play content as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I feel like I forget. I feel like how we were talking about a lot of the Ace representation that I can remember from like growing up was just like odd. Like I don't know if you ever watched, I don't remember if it was not Star Wars, no. It was probably Star Trek. There was like a robot-y alien kind of guy. And I think he was supposed to be Ace, but he was literally a robot alien.
That's problematic because it seems to suggest that all Aspec folks are. And actually, I have something we talked about in, I think either episode 1 or episode 2, the really disgusting scene in House MD, where where House basically suggests that, you know, the Ace character has to be corrected for being Ace.
Oh, yeah.
And that is really disgusting.
I really loved House, but there's so many episodes that are just not right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're
That one
just
in particular
not.
is so bad. It's just like
Yeah,
you're
no, they're
either like
yeah.
really sick or lying. Like, God damn.
Yeah, yeah, and you're like, "Dude, what? I thought you were smart." Like, but I guess that doesn't stop biases from slipping into the script,
No,
right? But,
absolutely.
um, I think there was a show I used to watch a lot, Criminal Minds. I think Spencer Reed was supposed to be Ace. Um, I don't know if you guys ever watch Criminal Minds, but I
Mhm.
love watching murder shows. Um, but I think he was supposed to be Ace. And he also, I think, was like shown as autistic or kind of came off
Yeah.
that way. Just because he like knows everything and he's like really never paying attention to like social cues.
Oh yeah.
um, but yeah. And then someone said a guy from BoJack Horseman. I haven't seen BoJack
Todd. So
Todd,
Horseman.
there's
Todd
a
Oh,
Schauble.
okay.
yeah, yeah. So Todd actually develops a ace dating app, and there's a whole kind of there's a
Oh,
whole storyline for a couple episodes of Todd developing this ace dating app, and the
uh-huh.
challenges it poses, and so that was a really neat storyline. I forget which season it was, but if you ever get the chance, I would recommend it. In terms of like mainstream media, that's
Mhm.
probably one of the better kind of representations I came across,
Yeah.
for a while. Uh,
People were like a lot of the doctors and like Doctor Who. Is it Doctor Who? No. Yes, Doctor Who. There's like a billion seasons of that, so I don't
Mhm.
know which all doctors they're referring to, but they're saying some of them are asexual. I
yeah,
don't know how well they did that because I know
yeah,
that show has been going on for forever. So
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of the, you know, representation, especially early on, was you were possibly uh, a cold robot and therefore aroace, and probably also
yeah.
autistic at the same time. And don't get me started at the really horrible ways
I
that
do not like
autism.
the yeah, the way the media has decided that autism either means genius or just
Genius
the
hacker
most
or cold
vile.
robot.
Like, yeah, it's horrible. Absolutely horrendous. Ooh, okay, wait. Bunny brought up Psyche K. Psyche K is so fun. Oh
Oh,
my goodness. Psyche
I
K
have
is
not
so
seen
fun.
that.
Such a good anime. So funny. The character he's he's just funny. He has people that like him, but he is kind of repulsed by them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's aro and asexual probably. He's a psychic. He was born a psychic with like psychic powers, so he can read into people's heads and it upsets him. Like he gets turned off very visibly by people being like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna accidentally fall in front of him, and then he's gonna help me up, and
Oh
then
no.
I'm gonna and then he's gonna fall in love with me because I'm the prettiest girl in school." And he's like, "I hate it."
No kidding.
Psyche K is such a fun watch if you
I will
like kind of
definitely have to check
humorous.
that out.
It's very silly. So it's very, very silly. He wears these antennas to like stop him from being OP. Like it's very, very silly. He changed the universe to think that pink hair is normal because he was born with pink hair. Like it is a very nonsense anime. But if you like humor and
I
you
do.
like him just hating hating dating people, he
Hell
also
yes.
will also like without a second thought like change his gender for any reason that's like convenient for him. So
I
he'll
mean, what
like
the
turn
fuck is
into
the
a
gender
girl.
binary?
Yeah, he'll like turn into his girl self if it's convenient to like do something. Like he just it gives no fuck. And I love that show so
Yeah,
much. So there are
absolutely.
some like weird parts because it's anime, sometimes anime is just odd, but a lot of the time it's seen as odd in the anime. It's not
Yeah.
like showed like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
that's normal. Like there's a character that's like obsessed with his younger sister, but the anime is like he's a disgusting pervert and will hit him all the time.
Uh,
Like will like ram him with a bus or something. So I don't know. I think it's one of the better animes for like people not wanting to date and like just
Yeah,
they don't call him Ace or Aro, but I think he is because he just has
definitely coded as one.
it's so hard coded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hardcore at least Aro for sure. Cause he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Duke, hello.
Hugster Duke, welcome on in. Good to see you, friend. Hugster Duke has been around since the start of the Ace and Arrow raid train.
Yeah.
He's been so supportive, so many streamers in both the Ace and Arrow raid train as well as the Spoon Platoon raid train. It's always wonderful to see you, Duke. How are you doing today? All right, so we've talked a lot about, representation in media, how bad it's been, how, there's at least, some more, smaller, non-mainstream content creators and spaces where, there's been a lot better representation of asexuality more recently. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Jessica?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I guess I'd like try to keep hope alive.
Yeah,
in the sense that,
absolutely.
like, you know, you gotta
It's getting
you
better.
gotta have some optimism that like it is getting better, and that
Yeah.
like I would say the media landscape is very different than it used to be. In that, like,
Absolutely.
not everybody gets all their media from the mainstream media anymore, and
Exactly.
so like that is actually helpful, I think. And
Huge,
so,
huge. Yeah.
yeah, I think just trying to be intentional about searching out the smaller ace creators
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but then also like having like Loveless as a show on Netflix also like
Yeah.
matters, right? And so I think having
Totally.
yeah, I don't know. I have hope. I have hope that we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
absolutely.
even Psyche K, I think it might still be on Netflix, or it was on Netflix. Like, I I realized too, like talking about it. I think a lot of, or maybe a lot of the Ace content that I've been consuming is moving towards humor. So I'm like, if that's our niche, I'm down as long as they're not
Hey,
making
of
fun of.
course.
As long as they're
Absolutely.
not making fun of us, like I'm
Yeah.
down. Like,
Totally. Totally. So I'm thinking, it's been about an hour and 45 minutes. I could probably go get some water, take a little break. How are we feeling about taking like a 5-minute break? I'll put on a Be Right Back screen, maybe run an ad here, and then we'll come back and talk about the next topic. What do you think?
I'm down. I could use the water.
Absolutely. Sounds good. So we're going to play, let's see, can I play an ad here while we're going on break? Let me see. Yes, I can. That's good, because then it means less ads that you have to put up with while we're chatting. So, there we are. Run a ad. All right, so I'm going to move it to the Be Right Back screen. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you so much, folks, for sticking around and watching the ad. It does support the channel a little bit here. I will mute us, and we'll be going on break. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Ooh, shiny.
And welcome back, everyone. Duke popping off with 3 gift subs to Retro Gaming, to Caberhook, and to the Demented Raven, all while we were on break. So very kind, Duke. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. You did not have to do that. Definitely trying to break me while we're chatting here. Or on break, even. All right, so next topic we were going to talk about was, I lost it. I've got way too many screens open here. There we
Ace
go.
Spaces Online, like even
Sorry?
Discord. Ace Spaces
Oh,
Online,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Spaces Online and Discords, and so I think we'll start just with a brief reminder of what is the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, aka AVEN. So AVEN, or the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, kind of evolved out of a Yahoo Groups chain known as the what was it? The Haven for the Human Amoeba, which was a reference to my life as a human amoeba, a 1997 blog post where somebody that identified as ace chatted about or talked about their experiences as coming out as asexual to their friends and family. So Haven for the Human Amoeba was a cheeky reference to that blog post, which in itself was a cheeky reference to, obviously, asexuality. And then as the Human Amoeba Yahoo group became way too unwieldy, because essentially a Yahoo group was just like one long email chain and there was no ability to break off into different threads. It became very clear that the longevity of the human Haven for a Human Amoeba would not be viable. And so I think Haven evolved out of that. And since then has been quite, early on was quite important for being a space where, folks with the lived experience of asexuality could come together and chat about their experiences. And I think for many years it's done a lot to, I guess, for ace advocacy. I would say that myself, I haven't spent a whole lot of time on it. And now that there's so many other ace spaces online and in IRL, I'm not sure it quite has the same importance as it once did. I still think it's really important for promoting, education about asexuality. But what are some examples of ace spaces both online and IRL that you've found to be the most helpful for you?
Yeah, I think I agree. I haven't really done anything with Avon. Like I know that exists because people in the
Yeah.
community talk about it a lot, but I feel like for those of us who maybe have come into the community more recently, it hasn't been like looming as large as it did before.
Absolutely.
I definitely think that like our Aces in STEM Discord is like
Definitely.
my like main online ace space. I think it's really awesome. I think to have a space where it's not just the asexuality piece that like brings people together. Like everyone is also somehow related to STEM, whether that's a student in STEM, working in STEM, all different fields and stuff like that. And it's like I don't know, it helps, I think, having extra overlap in interests and experiences.
Absolutely.
So I think, yeah, that's been really great. And obviously, we don't just talk about STEM related things or just
No.
ACE related things. Like it's everything. So I do appreciate
Yeah.
that about that community. I am also in some like local like ACE meetup groups and stuff, and so being able to meet other aces in the wild is interesting. I feel like I don't know that many people who are ace like in real life, and so
Yeah, for sure.
that's kind of fun, I would say. And then podcasts. So I listen to like an ace D&D podcast or like the ace couple who talks about ace like issues and stuff like that. I think I've found those to be like useful also.
Absolutely. And there's a couple other podcasts out there as well. Is it Okay But Sounds Fake? Was that another podcast?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree that, the Aces and STEM Discord for me has been really helpful and it's been really wonderful to be a part of. It was, I think, the very first Ace Discord I joined, if I can remember correctly. And obviously having the academic connection as well has been really great too, because there's lots of challenges being 2S LGBTQIA plus in academia, obviously. And then, much like yourself, I've come to find several groups locally and in Toronto that I've become more and more involved with. And through that and my work with the local Ace and Arrow discussion group that I've mentioned a couple times, those have all been really helpful for me. How about yourself, Mabes?
Yeah, since I remember I was actually on Avon for quite a
Yeah.
bit because I found out so early. I think I was on it in high school asking questions about like really, I didn't know anything. So I was like, if I have sex, am I still asexual? Like
Yeah.
like
Classic.
yeah, because at that time I feel like maybe Google wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if Twitter and everything. It probably was a thing, but I wasn't on it. I was very like sheltered as a kid, so I wasn't like all that much on like Twitter and Facebook and before that in yonder years, MySpace and everything. Um, so I feel like that was probably the only space where I felt like I could ask like older ace people my very silly questions, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, I remember just being on there asking like the most silly random questions that to me were very important at the time, right? Because I was like freaking out and I didn't have anyone else to talk to about it. Um, I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, and in the wild, I really don't meet that many ace people. I think in college, just like randomly, I would bump into demi people. I think as I became more involved in like queer spaces and LGBTIA plus spaces, I found
Wait
more.
a minute.
But
What just happened?
what
Yeah,
happened?
Duke just
Oh,
gifted another sub to Warrior for Life
you scared me.
9761. Yo, Duke, thank you so much, and sorry for the interruption.
No,
Sneaky Duke coming in
you were like,
again.
what happened? I was like, wait, what did I do?
No, not you, Duke, causing
Oh my
chaos for
gosh.
the stream.
Duke is so funny.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. I think mostly I don't know. I feel like a lot of my ace stuff was very like in myself.
yeah,
Um so I wasn't really in a lot of communities besides like asking the random questions on Avon.
yeah,
And then recently with like the Arrow Ace raid train, I think that
yes,
was the first like full like ace like Arrow Ace only community that I was a part of. That was like the first time I was like around so many people that were like, yeah, no, I get it. Like, haha, dragons. Like, um, that was, I don't know. It's just like to be able to make that joke and like everybody gets what like how it's
yeah,
funny and like ridiculous.
absolutely.
But also partly true. Uh, and it's just like, I don't know. That was really, really fun. And I think that Discord was probably the most interaction I've had with so many ace people, besides or Arrow
Definitely.
and ace
Yeah,
people besides myself. Um, I think I I don't know. I think I've been kind of lucky that I've always been surrounded by queerness and like LGBT people because we kind of naturally bump into each other.
yeah,
Like I kind of naturally bumped into fellow demisexuals or asexuals or arrows. Um, and then I'm also quite lucky because my sibling is triple A, arrow ace, asexual, and agender.
triple A.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, triple A, my favorite little triple A battery over there. um, so I always have someone to kind of bounce my nonsense off of or like my self doubt or whatever. Um, but I think, yeah, I think without Avon, it would have been a lot harder, which is probably why people talk about it. It's like, was
Yeah,
it the best website? No. Was it the prettiest? No.
yeah,
Uh, but it was like at a peak time where people have those questions about themselves
definitely.
that it was not easy to get answers
No,
to that. Like I
absolutely.
would type in asexual and like no joke, it would still be fucking single cell reproduction and plants. Like at the time, like I'm
Yeah,
not kidding. Like
Yeah.
I felt so foreign and so like it really was something where you could type in like asexuality.org. That's like I
Yeah,
think the
that's
actual
Yeah.
the actual
exactly.
link for Haven.
Exactly.
For and that was like the only place that I really had any information or learned about labels and stuff. And yeah, I'm sure I asked other questions too, but again, it happened when I was kind of young, so all I remember is like asking that one silly question. But I'm sure I remember like commenting on other people's posts too about
Definitely.
having trouble in relationships or like things like that. But I don't really. There was a lot of posts about long distance relationships
Mm-hmm.
too, and I think the amount of asexual people that are conveniently in a long distance relationship, because I guess we can't have sex because we don't. Um, I think that's
Yeah,
also just freaking hilarious to me. Um, but yeah, I think it really did help me. It happened so long ago.
Mhm.
absolutely.
So yeah.
I do
Yeah.
remember using Avon once or twice when I first realized my asexuality. And, I did post on there. And, when I was first, coming to realization with the term, I did look in some of the forums and look at a few things there. But beyond that, I kind of focused more on Discord and then more recently with the IRL groups. And Duke mentioned that is there a reason a portion of the chat box is blocked off? Is it? Is it blocked
Not on
off
my
on the
computer.
stream? Is it
On my
blocked
com-
off on the stream? Is that what you're referring to, Duke?
Are you on mobile? Because Twitch changed on mobile.
Yeah,
I don't even want
Twitch's
to
new
talk about
mobile app is
this.
absolutely horrid.
Yes. Okay, good. I thought you were gonna say you liked that. I was like, oh, just kidding.
No, it's
Yeah, it's booty.
terrible.
It's so bad. It's painful.
I wonder if it's a mobile issue.
Mhm.
Because I can when I'm looking at it
It looks normal.
in
Yeah,
my
it looks normal.
OBS, I can see that yes, there's a little bit of a delay, but it does seem to be showing the chat.
Hmm. On tablet.
Oh,
Ooh, might be
hmm,
glitched.
that is weird. Maybe it's the maybe the landscape orientation is not.
Or do you have like closed captioning as an option? Maybe try
That could
tapping
be it.
it.
It could
Maybe
be
if
that
it
there's a closed
like the
captioning on the
app is
side.
like blocking it. Yeah,
Hmm.
tablet's super weird too.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Oh
and it
no.
They
probably is
probably
using the
didn't fix
mobile
it
app.
for they probably didn't fix it for tablets.
I'm so sorry, Duke. That's
I know.
frustrating.
That is
That's
quite
so
unfortunate.
frustrating. Why did Twitch have to make all
And
those
they do it on
changes?
like a random Tuesday. Oh my lord.
Yeah.
They just do it the most random day. They're like, anyways, here you go. I changed your whole life. Are you
Surprise.
happy? We weren't even happy with it before.
No,
Fix
and
the functional issues. Don't fix the freaking how it looks.
exactly. Yeah. Not like this is the appropriate response to
Yeah,
that.
no. Yeah, actually.
So real.
Oh my goodness. They- I don't know. Yeah, I think at the time, like I'm dating myself, but at the time I think Avon functioned as Google for me,
Yeah,
but now it's like an
absolutely.
Yeah.
encyclopedia and it's just
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
like like now it's so much faster to
Yeah.
honestly I use TikTok more as like a
Mm-hmm.
search engine now than
Mm-hmm.
Google even sometimes. I'm like I type into TikTok and I'm like ace whatever and
Yeah,
I'll find anything.
absolutely.
And you find like real people, that look like
Mhm.
you. So
Totally.
um
Yeah, the other thing
And
that I didn't think of because I don't really go on Twitter anymore or X or whatever the hell. But back
yeah.
like I would say like a couple of years ago, the ace community on Twitter was actually really good,
It
and like
was.
that was a place that you could find a lot of people like doing activism or just like
Yeah,
informational things.
definitely.
And yeah, answering a lot of those questions like you were talking about on.
And that's how I found the Aces and STEM Discord
Yep.
was
Yep.
through some
oh
of those
yay.
very awesome Ace folks on. I
Yep.
refuse to call it what it wants to be called, Twitter.
I
Yep.
refuse to call it X as well.
Yo, welcome on in,
I
Racer Nando
do.
Gaming. How are you doing? But yeah, it's still Twitter. It's not what
Agreed.
it wants to be called. unfortunately, it's become a real bad place to be. I've actually tried
Yeah.
to start growing my threads, but my threads audience is so different. It's a much friendlier audience. You know, I've got lots of awesome NB folks on there, and 2S LGBTQIA plus folks. Not so much interested in content creation. So I've got this really different audience over on Threads, and it's like, do I post my content stuff on there, because I'm not seeing the same sort of interaction with it that I'm getting on Twitter, and that's been my biggest problem. Is I hate Twitter, but the folks that I have on my Twitter
Yeah.
are all more content creation focused, and so it seems to be the better place to post right now to get my content out there. And so I've got this kind of dilemma: how do I fix this?
Yeah, it's hard in these streets as a content creator right now.
I think a lot of communities are going through that, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, because Twitter just changed so much so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately.
I don't know. It feels like the floodgates kind of opened in a weird way. Like,
It most certainly did, and it's just
so,
continued to go downhill, and it's not a
yeah.
nice place to be anymore. Yeah, have a wonderful time with your friends
Ooh.
there, Nando. Thanks for popping in. Always good to see you.
Bye, Nando. Have fun at Otaku Con.
Absolutely. So yeah, I would say I have been to Avon. You know, it's a great kind of resource. It's, been important for a long time. I would say it's been less important to me personally, because I've gotten most of my, I've gotten most of the my own kind of content and connections from Discord, and then from IRL Ace and Arrow organizations as well. Obviously, the Ace and Arrow group that I run here locally has been really important as well for my own personal growth, and it's kind of inspired this podcast series as well, because a lot of the things that I've managed to talk about with the group are some of the very same things that we're going to be talking about in the podcast series. So it's been really important. It's been a big kind of important part of my own personal growth. Is there any sort of other thoughts you have on kind of Ace Spaces at this point?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think we got it.
So a big one that I've always wanted to cover and haven't had the opportunity to cover a whole lot yet is intersectionality, because there's so much to talk about here. There's so much we can go into. But I think just to get everybody on the same page, we should kind of come up with a basic definition of what we mean by intersectionality. So essentially, intersectionality is a term that was coined by Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, and it's essentially the study of looking at overlapping identities and the related systems of oppression, and how these different identities can kind of add to and make oppression, or make what's the best way to describe this, but yeah, essentially adding oppression from all sorts of different angles, if you
It's
will.
like if you have a Uno deck, right?
Yeah,
And there's a +2.
yeah,
And the +2 is oppression.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and we go around and we keep stacking +2. And the
Mhm.
last person with all the +2s has the most oppression.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
like,
think,
how does it affect how you're treated by society,
yeah.
basically?
So
Yeah.
all the
But
things.
I also would like push back a little bit on like the oppression Olympics framing, right? It's
Yeah.
not
Oh, yeah.
about like who has the most. It's
Yeah,
about how do you experience it differently
exactly.
Yeah.
depending on your intersectional identities. And
Exactly.
but I think that also like having those intersectional identities is both like can both be complicated and make things like more challenging, but also can be a
Definitely.
good thing and like
Yes.
help inform. And I actually
Absolutely.
very much experience that from both sides, I would say.
Yeah. I agree.
Yes, we did cover the invisible orientation earlier on. And I think we talked about the 1% in the first episode, Duke. So yeah, we talked about it earlier on. I think we chatted for about 30 minutes related to that. So you can watch back on the podcast later, I think.
Are you putting it up on YouTube or
Yeah,
just
so it'll be
Oh,
going up on YouTube after stream, either today or tomorrow. Well, actually, no, tomorrow I'm in Toronto, so I'll try to get it done today. If not, it will be up by Monday.
yeah.
But yeah, you bring up a very good point, Jessica. So intersectionality can have, a lot of implications in terms of oppression, but I would say that in in other ways, my intersectional identities have actually been also helpful for me to figure
Yep.
out.
Yeah.
Those overlapping kind of communities have been somewhat helpful for me to forge and
Yep.
be a part of as well. So there's sort of two sides to this coin as well.
Yeah. I think all identities, all intersectional identities have good and bad parts.
Yep.
Yeah,
Good and bad
absolutely.
parts because you're seeing things differently than other people would see things, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that perspective is also it is a plus, but it is also a curse depending,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
Exactly.
but but I do think too, like for example, if there is a tr- black trans
Mm-hmm.
non-binary
Mm-hmm.
like like
Absolutely.
ace person, they're gonna have in society, right, a harder time than
Mhm.
someone who is all the opposite of those things or different
Absolutely.
from those things. So I feel like it's not like an Olympics on like, oh my god, yay, you're the most depressed.
No.
I think it's mostly just like, yeah, let's take into account like everyone's perspective is going to be different,
Yeah.
and if there is someone who's having a worse experience out of all of us, it's still good to hear them out. But that doesn't invalidate um
Absolutely.
Right.
your own perspectives and your own life experience. It's just going to be like you kind of have to admit like some people just got the shitty stick. Like
Yeah.
so and I think it's important to acknowledge that, but not ever because there's always someone that has it worse, right? um
Yeah. But
so I
I
think
also think that some people will take that as the like, oh well, I can't complain because I don't have it as bad as other people, or I can't talk about my experience because this other person it's just like
yeah.
all of the perspectives are actually important to be talking about.
Definitely.
Mhm.
And they all add, different
Yeah.
angles and
Right.
help us better understand things. So I think, having all these different perspectives is really important to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that, one of the really awesome advocates out there, Yasmin Benoit,
Mm-hmm.
has talked a lot about the uh, her experience being BIPOC and
Yeah.
Arrow Ace, and just how many trolls and horrible
Yeah.
comments she gets on a daily basis through the
Yes.
disgusting troll farm that Twitter is, and also
Oh
just
yeah.
in reality in
Yeah.
life. And it's really been hard to see just how much hate she gets for being, black and Arrow Ace.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
that's a really
and
good.
that she experiences it differently
Exactly.
than someone who is more perceived as white or
Yeah, exactly.
for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. But I did absolutely love the ad she put out at London Pride this year. Did you see that?
No.
It was, I think, uh, asexuals, we are everywhere. And I just about
Oh.
fell off my chair. It was so great. It was so great. I'll see
Oh,
if I
that's
can pull it
freaking
up.
adorable.
I'll have to
Yeah.
I saw art that was during the I don't know if someone made it during the Aero Ace Spec Raid train, but it was like out of all the or maybe just because it was Pride Month. But it was all the different identities and like the things they're told the most, and it was like asexuals, like you're not broken. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's so cute.
Trying to pull it up, see if I can get. There we go. Pulled it up. Here we go. Let's see if I can copy and paste that to.
Her. Are you gonna put it in the chat?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in. No, I'm gonna actually put it as a source in OBS here if I can.
Ooh, so smart.
Give me 1 second and I'll try to pull it up. So, image, add source, source. This was one of the greatest ads I've ever seen in regards to, you know, ace and arrow identities in general. Let me move it so that it's not blocking everyone, but hopefully, can folks see that on the screen okay? We'll leave it up for a
Yes.
couple minutes. I know it's blocking your PNG tubers.
Oh, but it's so good.
Isn't it? Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
And this year, Yasmin Benoit was the first ace person to lead the London Pride Parade.
Aww.
And unfortunately, people got in the whole
Of
oppression
course.
Olympics bullshit,
Yeah.
being like,
Yeah.
you're ace, how can you not, you know, how could you dare have some sort of, you know, how are you being oppressed?
Yeah.
And it was just like, stop it.
It's frustrating. I think it is like people see, I'll explain. People see being an invisible orientation, quote unquote, right, as being a plus
Mhm.
Yeah.
because they're like, well, we're very physically and like very obviously like gay or trans or whatever. And then of course being physically anything is always going to make you more um easier of a target.
Yep.
Yeah.
um so I feel like yes, right? It's like no, we're not a target on site, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that we don't also go through
Yep.
ridiculous things.
Right.
Um,
And that erasure is its own form of discrimination.
Absolutely is
Yeah.
oppression and is definitely a form of, yeah, basically it is an example of how, you know, ace and arrow folks are oppressed and why we are part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community.
Oh, jeez.
Are you okay?
Yes.
no.
Cat
Dropping
issues?
things. No, I just dropped a thing and then scared my cat. Sorry.
Oh dear. Oh no.
It did sound like scared cat. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I thought that was a cat.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
All the cat owners.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, you're a cat.
The struggle over here. No, but like I think that this is actually one of the things that like is very like near and dear to my heart. So I am also mixed Asian, so I'm half Japanese and half white, and it is a very similar story where depending on the group of
Yeah.
people that I'm with, I am either you are Asian or you are white, and I'm like
Mhm.
I am neither of those things
Yeah.
actually.
You're both of those things. Yeah.
Well, I actually don't identify with both of those things. I actually identify as mixed Asian, like a different, separate
Yeah,
identity,
yeah.
right? And like, but I didn't know that for a really long time. Like, I did not realize that like being mixed was like a separate thing. And I
Yeah.
don't think I ever would have gotten there if I had not already been doing so much like introspection around the aceness and like that identity and sort of learning like how strong the rationalization machine is and like maybe sometimes you gotta like think a little bit more critically about what society is telling you. And so it was really like liberating to like discover like, oh, there is a different word that can describe my experience than what I had been assuming for like my entire life. And like connecting those dots between the erasure of my aceness and the erasure of my mixedness, and like,
Yeah.
oh, actually, I can understand both of them better by like putting them in conversation with each other as opposed to it being separate.
Yeah.
And I thought that you would appreciate this. So there is a website called Mixed Asian Media where all of the content creators are mixed Asians, and there is a writer who wrote an article on this topic of passing, right? And like the downsides of passing,
Yeah.
even though like there are benefits that come with it. So this writer is non-binary, bisexual, and half Chinese, and wrote that it's incessantly and involuntarily having my identity erased in a single glance.
Yeah.
Because everybody just like perceives you the way that they want to perceive you.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you actually identify. And I was like, I am not non-binary, bisexual, or half Chinese, and yet I like
I can
relate to
relate.
that
Yeah.
statement so
Totally.
strongly, because I think any invisible identity kind of has that erasure sort of tagged onto it, regardless of
And
whether you want it or not.
yeah,
Definitely.
and that's just like it's so how say this, but the pain that people receive that are physically visually out, right,
Yeah.
a lot of the times is physical. It's going to be physical violence, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I don't want anyone to think this, but I feel like invisible, whether it's like disabilities or invisible orientations, we receive invisible pain, right? And we're receiving pain to the self because not only are other people going to deny us and think we're not in the room, we also deny ourselves.
Yep.
And I think those are, it really messes you up mentally.
Mhm.
Like, it's so hard to describe. And you guys know, thankfully. But it's like, it is hard to describe, like, when you're trying to convince yourself, like, oh, just be like other people, since people already think
Yeah.
you're like other people, just do this thing. And it really messes you up.
Mhm.
And it's really difficult. So, you know, it is good to acknowledge that both sides suffer.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's just a different,
It's just a different
thing.
suffering,
Yeah.
just a different suffering. Yeah. But I'm like really adamant. I don't ever want people to think like I'm like, oh, you're saying this is better. No, they're both shit. Like,
Yeah.
like it sucks to receive pain either way for just existing. Like, I don't ever think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But,
Like that's like the importance of intersectionality, right? It's like
yeah.
don't limit the conversation to, oh, if you're not being physically harassed, you're not like, facing discrimination. And it's like, no, actually, like, let's
Yeah.
take a broader view, a more intersectional view about like what does discrimination actually mean, such that like we're not throwing people under the bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do think like in terms of within the ace community, like for the longest time, okay, listen, I will say this, but I hope you will understand. Like, I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there because I'm brown.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like much like how autism is portrayed as male and white, I think the same kind of went as far as I could see for ace-ness. And so I felt like I felt weird. I felt odd, and it's like even the people that I would try to talk to, it's like obviously we're gonna have different cultural experiences in this area because you just can't relate.
Mhm.
So that sucks, but it's not anyone's like fault necessarily. I think it's just part of how, and it's not a good thing, but it's how things come about. It's usually the first people that are focused on are white mask people,
Mhm.
like as representation, and then it like as we kind of learn more about it, more people are usually introduced, and I don't think that's like a good or a bad thing. I just it is
Yep.
like it
Yeah.
just is. It would be nice to have more like visibly black or visibly anything else like Asian or anything like ace people to feel more belonging. But I think like the more, like I said, like now that we have like TikTok and stuff, of course I see black ace people and black like ADHD, autistic and all kinds of stuff people and see their experiences. But I don't know like when that's gonna catch up to the mainstream.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like it's like very behind.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
I'm
Do we
just
want to
gonna
talk
sip my
about
water.
Yeah, I was gonna
the
say.
worst side of intersectionality and when the identities actually are kind of in conflict with one another?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
You want to
Yeah,
start
I
us
think
off?
Yeah, I mean, I think an obvious one that's been talked about a lot more recently, which I think is a good thing that it's talked about more, is like the disabled community and the ace
Oh
community,
yeah.
right?
Oh
And like that
yeah.
intersection has been very contentious for a long time for reasons
Yeah.
that make perfect sense, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
the disabled community doesn't want to be infantilized, which is incredibly valid, but then
Mhm.
it like can bleed into the like, of course we have sex, we're human, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, that's not the thing.
No.
But then
Yeah.
on the ace side, it's the same thing, right? Like ace people don't want to be pathologized. Oh my god, I can't speak. Like medicalized, right? Of being
Yeah.
like, oh, well, the reason that you're ace because of this thing, but then that bleeds into like, well, there's nothing wrong with us physically or
Mhm.
mentally, and that's very ableist, which is like
Yeah.
a problem. So like those communities have been sort of
At
in
war with each other
conflict.
for
Yeah,
yeah, for a hot
for
minute.
exactly for reasons that make sense, but like you have to take that intersectional view and also recognize that like there are disabled ace people and like people who
Yeah.
experience both of these things, and so trying to like expand the umbrella instead of gatekeeping it and like making it smaller, it's like no, there's space for all of these experiences like within the communities is really important to keep in mind.
Yeah. And it's always it always hurts like when there's two identities fighting with each other
Yeah.
because it's always they're not even fighting each other just because they want to fight. They're fighting to defend what little space they feel like
Yes.
they have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because you don't want to take away from either of those identities. Like
Exactly.
I completely understand like you don't want to be seen as a disability, but then that in and of itself is ableist. Like
Yep.
you don't want people to see you as a child that doesn't have sex, and you're like, oh, it's part of human experience. And then
Yeah.
you're like, what? Am I not a human as an ace?
Yep.
Am
Yeah.
I a robot again?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And so like, but it makes sense because they're both trying to like keep the
Yep.
little space that they feel like they fought for and they have
Yep.
like in the mainstream, right?
Yep.
Or in society, right? And it's so hard to like like I don't know, it's so hard to mm,
Like
get them
capture
to
the
let go
nuance.
of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard to be like, hey, this is not about taking away from you. This is about trying to include people in between the both of you.
Yeah.
Like while you're trying to take your space and you're trying to take their space, there's one person in the middle that has both of these identities that is suffering, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And it's just like it is hard because it's like you know where it's coming from.
Right. No, exactly. You know where it's coming from. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, right, like as we were saying, because nobody like knows, like not nobody, obviously, like at the mainstream level, right? There's just
Yeah.
so little knowledge about even like baseline asexuality, for example, right? So
Yeah.
like therefore it's more challenging to have the nuanced conversation. Therefore, you try to simplify it to like
Yeah.
have an easier time for yourself, and then in so simplifying, that's when you can like get into trouble
Like
because now
Exactly.
stereotypes
exactly
and
stereotyping or
yeah.
generalizing too much or whatever, which
Yeah.
then excludes a whole part of like your community, and it's like ah
Yeah.
it's very, very difficult.
Because I think, in generalizing, societies come to learn that all asexuals are sex repulsed. They
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
zero sexual attraction ever. And if that's
Yeah.
not the
And
case, then
yeah, and I think that you know what's so funny is I think that stereotype in and of itself because I have layered identities as most people do. So there's that. It's like asexual people never have sex, they never talk about sex. They're like "Ugh," they throw up when they hear the word, right? Or they're robots. And then I'm also Latin, which is a hypersexualized
exactly.
identity. So then I feel like that added on, and then I look black because I have afro. There's a lot of things going on here. And I feel like because of those things, I was both hypersexualized, but because I didn't want to be sexual, I was seen as a tease. Right. And I think that could
Right.
also be part of like being a girl, like saying no to sex. Like
Yeah.
people just call you a tease to shit on you. But like it was really difficult to deal with all of that and still feel like my identity is valid when it's invisible. Like
Yep. Yep.
there's like so many layers to this cake, and it's just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, like I don't know. It was really hard as a teenager. I was
Yep.
so confused,
Yep.
and I feel like again, like we already as asexuals like feel a societal pressure for sex because it's
Yep.
so interwoven with love and relationships that it's already hard, and then adding any kind of like I know Asians are also like hypersexualized, like most other cultures.
Yep.
Most
The
women of other
exoticism.
cultures are
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like it's really difficult to be seen as hypersexual and then reject that for any reason,
Yeah.
and then be seen as like, oh, like you're a bitch or oh whatever. It's just like, what does that make sense? No.
Yeah, it's like because other people's expectations of you are
Yeah.
different, you then like if you even if you do the exact same thing as somebody else with a different identity, it is
Mhm.
taken differently because the expectation started somewhere else.
Exactly. It already started from a place of like hypersexuality. And then and then that's the other thing too, because I will make sexual jokes and people that's a
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
asexuality that people don't understand. Where's the robot, right? Well, you're making sexual jokes. I don't
Right.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they don't understand either of those things. It's already they're seeing me hypersexual. I talk like quote unquote a normal human, right? And then all of a sudden I come out as an asexual robot. Who are you? Right? They
Yeah.
can't wrap their head around it.
How
and
dare you not exist in the exact way that I expect asexuals to be?
Exactly. How dare you not only like garlic bread and just sit in a corner and be a robot? Okay? How dare you? Where's your dragon collection? I don't understand. And it's frustrating because it's like you can't like for me personally, like I'm Latin, I just am. That's not something I want to deny in myself. Like I'm
Yeah.
very about living your true self. I'm also black looking, which I'm like Afro Latina, so like black mixed in there anyways. And that's something I cannot change. Like
Yep.
physically I cannot change, but I guess I could change my hair, but like I don't know, it's just very very odd. And hypersexual is coined as a side effect of sexual abuse. Huh, is it really? I don't know that. But yeah, it's very layered, and I think if people are already looking at you from a hypersexual lens and you reject that,
Yeah.
there's always some defensiveness or angriness from that side.
Yes.
Like just like I think that's added on because I'm a girl too. Like
Yes.
weird people hate to be rejected.
Yes.
So it's extra difficult, right? So I don't know. It's a hard time over here in this cake and this onion.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know that Yasmin Benoit, I know that she likes to push the envelope and, purposely wear, what people would consider to be theoretically
Like
provocative
provocative
clothing.
or whatever. Yeah.
And therefore, she gets all this hate about,
Therefore,
for it.
you can't be asexual.
Yeah. How dare
Yeah.
you wear clothes that
Yeah.
aren't, really
Mhm.
conservative dresses, right?
Yeah.
How dare you want to have your boobs out? How dare you? You're supposed to be a robot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Ridiculous.
And so, there's just so many layers on that. And obviously, with Twitter being just the cesspool that it is, it's become amplified so much. But this is a really important issue that I haven't been able to talk about yet. So I'm really glad we've been able to talk about this now, because it's something that I have not seen a great discussion of anywhere, really.
Yeah. I think it's any minority in a minority is it's very hard to hear from them if you're
Yes,
not in it,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And it's hard because it's one of those cycles where it's like there's so little of us,
Mhm.
and then even when we speak out, it's not really getting out there. Like
Yeah.
it just keeps kind of circling around in its own self. Which is why which is why I'm so adamantly asexual, because I didn't see a lot of people like me growing up. The only asexual people that I saw, or Tim Gunn is the only one I really knew like a person, and he is a white old man.
Yeah.
So like, comparing myself to that, I just was like, okay, well, you're just weird. We're just gonna have to rock with that. We're just gonna deal with that. And thankfully, like I've seen more, but even in the Ace or in the Aero Ace Spec raid train, I feel like there's minorities within a minority all the time.
Absolutely. It was
So
some really great representation from all across the
yeah.
community.
Yeah, that was like really nice to see because it was the first time I was like, oh my god, look, there's black ones and there's Latin ones.
Hmm.
Nobody else can say this. I can say uh, but I was really, really happy because it's like you finally are feeling like you fit in and you're seeing so many there's indigenous like creators, there
Yeah.
like all kinds of stuff. And I was like, wow, we really do come in all the shades of the crayon box. Like, and I was really
Yeah.
happy um because I just don't usually see that. And I think it's part of the stereotypes of being
Yeah.
ace that it's just like a nerdy, weird white
Hmm.
person. Like, and it's so unfortunate because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, first of all, you can be nerdy, weird, and black.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
um, or like any shade, any color, and any expression, any gender, like, um, and yeah, for me, it feels a lot how like autism is shown, or
Yeah.
like anything where it just is it's infantilized and then also focused on like white
Hmm.
Yeah.
voice or white mask
Absolutely.
presenting people, which is so odd to me why they want to keep it in that realm. Because at least where are the white women? I don't ever understand that. Like what's going on here? Um, yeah, I think that's just like medical and just like research bullshittery that I don't
Yeah,
understand. But um,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Jessica, do you have any idea? Like, where are you? What's going
I mean, I don't. I think one of the things is just based off of I don't know, just like the way that Western culture and like American culture specifically has like evolved, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so such that it is kind of standard practice to have like white male is the
I was like
default.
the
Anything
phenotype?
is, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like that's like what everybody is most comfortable with
Hmm.
studying and like
Mhm.
making all the comparisons to and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
like I think there have been more conversations more recently about like maybe we should not be framing it that way all
Yeah.
the time. But like,
Maybe this
Okay.
is limiting.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like inertia is also a thing, right? And it does
Yeah.
like take time to like start shifting
Mhm.
those types of perspectives. So like, but okay, like where I was going with that is because that's like so ingrained in our culture, right? There's been so many studies about like if um if men and women speak the same amount in a meeting, right? It's
Oh, yeah.
viewed as if the woman had spoken a lot more. In
Mhm.
fact, the women can only speak, I think, 30% of the time to be viewed as speaking the same as men. And so like that type of bias like leaks into all these other spaces in the
Hmm.
sense that like, on I would say there's kind of a stereotype that asexuality is a white woman's thing because a lot of the like people who were very like vocal in that space were white
Oh,
women.
were
But
white women in the
Yeah.
beginning. Ah.
yeah, but then like when like on TV, so like Todd Chavez, right, is like a white man mostly, portrayed that way, and people were like, "Oh, it's so great to finally see like male asexual representation." And it's like actually, there's a lot of male asexual representation on TV,
Yeah.
like, but you're not like seeing that because you're just assuming that it's not there. I don't know, like there's something
Mhm.
there about just like the way that
Yeah.
people sort of selectively remember
Hmm.
like how much are you actually seeing it because they just
Yeah.
default to being like, oh, that's so rare, therefore we need more of this thing that's actually overrepresented actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was cohesive. That's what I was
No,
thinking
yeah.
It
about.
makes sense. Makes complete sense. Absolutely.
It was so interesting. I think
Yeah.
like growing up, I only because I think even the creator of the asexuality.org, I thought it was a group of men. I don't remember exactly who it
It's
was.
mostly one man, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
What's his
okay.
name? Jay something?
Yeah.
Or maybe Jay
Jay
was his last
something.
name?
We're on a first name.
No,
I
We're on
Jay.
a first name basis.
I don't know. Again,
Let me
I wasn't
see.
like super
Because I
involved
think
in
I
it.
saw like a
David J,
documentary.
I think.
David
Forever.
J. There it is.
Yeah, David J.
Jay was part of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I saw like a YouTube series or a documentary or something about it at some point. And I feel like I saw a group of white men and I was like, yep, that's them. Just making assumptions. But yeah, it's interesting because in my I don't know, just thinking back on it, I always thought it was just like white guys. But
Oh, that's
hearing
interesting.
that it's like a lot of white women, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so weird because I haven't seen you. And that's weird to me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why didn't I? If that's so
Yeah,
strange.
that's interesting. I feel like that was like the stereotype that I was running into when I was first
Yeah.
like looking into the
Yeah, same.
like asexual identity. It was just like, oh, this is just a thing that white women made up online. You're like, what?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so maybe because I'm not in white women's space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so interesting because I saw it, I guess, from social media down. Like outside of
Mhm.
myself, I saw it from like social media and TV down. And on TV and stuff, I just saw dudes. So I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
it's
On
just
TV,
dudes.
Yeah,
it's like mostly
absolutely.
men.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
very interesting.
But I guess online it was women centered.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Ah. See,
And I
there's
know
something
my
every day.
local discussion group I run, definitely there are more, the largest proportion of it is white women for the most part.
Oh.
So it kind of falls under that stereotype, sadly.
Yep. And I think
Yeah.
some of that came from like, and I guess some of the reasons why the stereotype got like connected, I think, so strongly was because of the whole like, oh, like asexuality is not a real thing. Like this is just the thing
Yeah.
that women are like in relationships, quote unquote. You know, you're just
Oh
like,
yeah, because
oh my god.
there's that or not even stereotype, because I feel like it. Well, I don't know what it is, but the idea that women are always like trying to quote unquote get out of sex.
Yes, exactly.
Like, oh,
Yep,
my head
yep,
hurts.
exactly.
Oh, like
Yep.
I don't feel good. When that's a whole nother can of worms, but it's basically guys don't know how to do the thing. But like I don't know. It's just so fascinating to me. Like, well, I guess that makes sense because, like I was saying earlier, it makes more sense for women to kind of discover that a little easier because you can talk amongst yourselves,
Right.
Yeah.
and you're a little bit more open to that kind of like
Yeah.
queerness in your own self and in your relationships as well.
Yeah.
So that makes more sense. I guess I don't know. I guess in my head, I just all the media that I consumed growing up was just focused on men. So I just assumed it was men.
That's
That's
the bias.
fascinating.
That's the bias in media, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's sad, actually.
Yeah,
That's so
it's-
fucked.
It's
What
it's
the
really
fuck?
problematic. Absolutely.
Mhm. Jesus.
So
But
I know
oh,
one of
sorry.
the things that we wanted to talk about, how did the realization of your ace identity change the way you think about intersectionality?
Mm.
I think for
Oh.
me, it was like, I mean, it got me examining other identities much more closely,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
right? Because like, I don't know, when you're young and you think you know everything, and you're like, you know, like I know myself super well. What are you talking about? And then it's like, oh, I've been rationalizing away this huge part of myself for 20
Mhm.
years. Interesting. Like, you know, I think it kind of opens your mind to like, oh, there are a lot more different experiences than I grew up believing. And
Yeah.
and just that awareness, I think, is really helpful, but also like has connected the dots, I think, and
Mhm.
shown the similarities between
Yeah.
different groups of people.
Yeah.
Even if you don't
Yeah.
share the same identity, you're able to like relate in like a more authentic way. Because even being able to like,
Absolutely.
oh, I don't understand your experience, but
Mhm.
like the way that we relate to broader society or
Yeah.
whatever is
Yeah.
like similar because you still like hold these different identities. And so I think that is
Mhm.
like very helpful from like an emotional intelligence perspective.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think because I discovered my aceness so young.
Yeah.
I didn't really have thoughts about it. I think I was very open-minded growing up, which is weird, but I'm very grateful for it because my dad was very into anime. I know, okay, this is going somewhere, I promise. But he was very, very into anime because it was one of the easiest things that could be transferred and translated over to the Dominican Republic,
Mm.
where he grew up. And anime has, at least when I was growing up, has such a more fluid understanding of gender and identity, sexuality. Like I was
Mhm.
seeing like, oh, men dress up as women and quote unquote, like all
Mhm.
that stuff. Like that's worded poorly in reflection of how it was worded back then.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
like I was able to see all those different kinds of expressions so young. And so when I
Mhm.
saw them growing up in my friends, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
Mhm.
and like, so my friends would come out to me and be like, "Oh my god, I don't know how to say this, but I think I like boys." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Okay, you like boys. I don't know why you're telling me I'm not a boy." um, and I think I accepted my aceness like as a fact pretty early, and I just kind of, but I didn't like it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I felt like that wasn't up to snuff with society, so I was like, okay, let's see what else we could do here. But I think in terms of like how that made me think of intersectionality, I think I was more, I think, how explain? I was more into the intricacies of relationships across all everything. Like
Mhm.
because once I just like once your brain is wired to like the difference between attraction and
Yes.
like versus
Yeah.
everything else, all of a
Yes.
sudden like you're like your neurons are firing at like 10
Yes.
billion because you're like, wait a second, I'm looking at my straight friend and you don't like her. You don't like
Yeah.
her, but you're attracted to her. That's
Yep.
weird, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then you're seeing it in all these other areas. And I felt like that was such a skill that I thought was so important that I realized not a
Mhm.
lot of other people have because they've never sat down to dissect like what they would think is dissecting to us as normal
Exactly.
Yeah.
relationships.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and they're like, why would I sit here and dissect what kind of love I have for someone or what kind of
Mhm.
sexual? And you're like, why wouldn't you? Because
Why
now you're
wouldn't you? Yeah.
unhappy.
Yeah.
Now you're unhappy with 6 kids, and you don't even like this person.
Yeah.
and, and I feel like that it just changed the wiring of my brain.
Yeah.
Like I just
Definitely.
and I don't know. I think I take every identity and everything. This is not to say I don't care about them or I don't know. I don't give them weight. That's not. But I just take it when someone comes up to me and they're like, "My name is Sam," and I'm like, "Cool." And then the next day they're like, "Just kidding. My name is Tim." I'm like, "Okay, cool, Tim." I take people how they want to be
Yes.
presented to me,
Yes.
but I think ever since like realizing my aceness and what that means for relationships, all of a sudden I'm like, all the relationships in the world are fucked. Like nothing
Yes.
makes sense. Nothing
Yes.
is effective and nothing makes sense.
So true.
It's so weird. Like I don't understand if you don't want to teach sex in school, why don't you teach attraction
Yeah.
versus love or
Yep.
whatever bullshit,
Yep.
it just doesn't make any sense to me, but yeah,
Yeah, I think
that's
that's the thing. Like, I think that that's like one of the things that the ace community could like really help broader
yeah.
society with is like, no,
Yeah.
like you could be a lot happier if you're actually thinking about what you want and not what do I think other people want
Yes.
me to want. You
Yeah.
know? And so I think that that is definitely one of those things that like the asexual community should like is already changing the conversation around that
Yeah.
and like that should continue. But then
Yeah.
also I think just generally when you have had to maybe when you have had to
Yeah.
like deconstruct
Mhm.
something that you want that is so different than what society tells you that you should want, you are almost now like predisposed to start doing
Yeah.
that in
Yeah.
other areas of your life.
Like now you see atoms, like like now you're seeing everything in the amount of detail that you do, like your
Mhm.
own sexuality and your own
Exactly.
self, and now you're like, wow, this is a
Yeah.
mess. This is not cute. Like what is happening here? And I feel like that changed for me all relationships, like friendship.
Definitely.
It changed for me
Yep.
romantic
Absolutely.
relationships. It changed for me even familiar relationships where it's like you don't love me. You're tied to me by this invisible blood thing. This is weird. Like it's just everything. Like I was able to see through the matrix.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like what the heck? But yeah, I think that helped. It could be partism as well. Okay, I will acknowledge.
Yeah.
But but I think having that as an ace person, I realize personally, like if you're not demi or you're not ace under the ace umbrella, a lot of other like friends that I have of different identities don't sit down and wonder if they're attracted
Yes.
versus like sexually attracted versus aesthetically attracted versus romantically attracted. Um
Absolutely.
and I think that's just weird to me. I'm like, isn't that a
I
waste of
know.
time? Because if you just sit down and you're like, okay, I'm aesthetically attracted to women, but sexually attracted to men, and
Mhm.
then like romantically attracted to women, then you're like, okay, then you really gotta decide for yourself.
Right,
Like
exactly. What is
like
more
yeah,
important to
like
you?
stop wasting other people's time. Like you gotta sit down for yourself, and you gotta like do a little quiz. And I feel like that would be so much more
Yeah.
useful. And it's something that like I'm sure there are some people that can do it, obviously, but I think ace people have it on lock because
Yep.
we do have to like you said deconstruct. I like that word better than dissect. But yeah, you do have to deconstruct kind of what relationships are and what they mean
Yeah.
and
Yep.
what you want. What are you looking
Yeah.
for?
What do you
And
actually want?
on what level? Yeah. Like I feel like that's so much more important because if you realize actually I do not want a romantic relationship, then you know not to be in a relationship with someone else that's like I absolutely want a
Right.
romantic relationship and
Yep.
I'm not willing to be in a polyamorous relationship. Then
Right.
you're like, okay, let's not waste our time.
Right. No,
Mhm.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
being able to actually have the language to talk about it and in a way that's not like this is somebody's fault. Like somebody really
Yeah.
screwed this
Yeah.
up. Where it's like, no, it's actually like it's
Yeah.
okay to be able to say,
We're
hey,
just
we really
different.
care about each other, but we don't like
Yeah.
are not going to be compatible with this type of relationship. Like that's
Exactly.
totally fine. But you
Yeah.
can't do that if you don't have the language to talk
If you
about it.
don't yeah, if you don't even understand the concept, there's no way you could
Exactly.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me that if it wasn't for figuring out my ace identity, I certainly would never have figured out it was arrow most likely. And
Oh,
I would
yeah.
still be trying to fit into this, society's representation of relationships as being romantic and sexual. And if you don't have that,
Yeah.
well, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as soon as I figured out, hey, I'm ace, I really then was able to put together the pieces that, hey, I'm also arrow as well, and then
Mhm.
really start thinking much more in depth about what is attraction, what are the different kinds of attraction, and thinking about relationships from a very different perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so I don't know. I always find it interesting to hear from people that like discovered everything later on cuz I'm
Yeah.
always like there must have been like a sense of loss for that fake imagined self that you're
Yeah.
supposed to
Oh,
be.
yes.
And I'm like I can't even imagine like being like, "Oh, in the future, I'll figure it out. Eventually, I'll have a wife and kids and settle down and we'll love each other and everything like we're supposed to." And then you're like, "No, actually, that's never going to be me because that's not going to make me happy." Like,
Yeah.
Sure.
oh my goodness. Like,
That's definitely a real thing for me.
Yeah.
Like I definitely grew up in a family where like family is everything. Like, we're
yeah.
very, very close and like the expectation is always like, okay, you're gonna get married and you're gonna have
We're
kids
gonna
and like
figure it
all this
out.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, so like when I figured it out, there was definitely, yeah, this sense of loss of like, oh, the picture of the rest of my life is not going to be the same. And
Mhm.
like, I still don't know, like, I could still have kids. There are other ways of having kids
Mhm.
if I
Yeah.
if I wanted to do that. But like, I'm now questioning, do I
Do
actually
I
want to do
even
that?
want to?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or is that something
Yeah.
that was put on me
Yeah.
externally, right? And
Yes.
so, yeah, that's definitely a current
Yeah.
current debate still. But like, yeah, it is different. Like, I actually wonder sometimes, like, what would my life have been like if I would have figured it out a lot earlier, right? I think that
Yeah.
I could have saved myself and other people a lot of pain because I would have been able to freaking communicate about what was happening a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, it's hard to, yeah, you can't do the other, you can't do the control experiment, right? You can't do the other
Yeah.
one.
You can't go
Yeah.
back. You can't copy paste yourself and you can put yourself under different conditions,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I always think about that. I feel like but even though I figured it out so early, I still feel like I'm similar to you. Just I don't
Yeah.
even know if you would save time.
Mhm.
Because the amount of like, or at least I don't know if every asexual person goes through this, obviously, but the amount of imposter syndrome, the amount
Oh,
of self-doubting,
absolutely.
the amount of like
Yeah.
thinking, okay, well, no one could really confirm this for me that I'm never gonna, like,
Right.
so you keep testing and testing and
Yeah.
testing. And I feel like even though like while I was testing, I was still trying to communicate that with partners. So maybe in a way, you save
Yeah.
time not knowing. So there's not that like that
Yeah.
kind of crippling self-doubt.
Right.
But I still feel like I went so much time making it so hard for myself.
See, that's so interesting. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I'm talking not just emotional pain, but actual physical pain that I put myself
Yeah.
through that like I
Yeah, yeah.
really didn't need to do at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, but even so, that's really funny that you say that. But like, I'm an academic, which means
Uh-huh.
that imposter syndrome is very high all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Same,
so
same.
so like I've spent a lot of energy like working through my imposter syndrome generally. And so I don't know if that would have been helpful like in the ace space also. But I guess the thing that was so like the nail in the coffin for me was Angela Chen's book, because suddenly it was very much like, oh my god, I can really point at this thing that like indisputably tells me that I am ace.
Yeah.
But like, that book is very new, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
only the last couple of years that came out. And so you're right, maybe I would have been in that weird liminal space for years and years and years until I found that thing that was
Okay,
very
but
like, oh,
imagine no ace Discord. Imagine
Yeah.
no ace Discord, no ace Twitter. Okay,
Rough.
no
That'd be tough.
ace TikTok. you gotta
Yeah.
freaking you gotta go
For
on
sure.
Quora.
Yeah, I think I would still be thinking I was
Yeah,
some,
yeah.
shell
The
of
only
a
thing
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
pet male.
Yeah.
you gotta
No,
just
that's
experiment and
That's
find
super
out.
true. I think it's different for like younger folks who are coming up now.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Now there
It's
is like, the
much
community
easier.
is there, so that you
Mystic
can figure it out. Like,
Duke.
I have like students who are ace, right? And it's like
Yeah.
much more like comfortable, I guess, in identifying much earlier.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's mostly like where my headspace was at. It'd be like, oh, if I were young now and figuring it out
Yeah,
now,
if you were-
I
I
could have
think
saved myself
if
a
it
lot
was-
of pain. But maybe
yeah.
not back today.
Yeah, no. If you were born like yesterday, like actually there's so much like resource, right?
Yeah.
There's so many resources. There's so much like I know so many people that very easily are like, yeah, I'm blah 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 fluid, right? That are
Yeah.
young. That are
Mhm.
like and they accept that. They truly accept that within themselves that are like, yeah, but I don't know. I don't want to put a label on it. Or yeah, and it's just accepted, right? By their
Yeah.
peers, by themselves. And that was not in my day.
Yeah,
Back in my day.
for sure.
So
I do want to
and I'm
quickly
only oh sorry.
sorry about that. I do want to quickly
You're
acknowledge
good.
2 subs. Thank you so much
Aw.
again. Duke gifted another sub to Ghost Hugs Incoming. And then Mystic Dreams subbed with Prime. Thank you so much. You all have been way too kind today. Thank you so much. You're about to make me cry even.
Cry.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
community.
Wait, you're
Aw,
supposed to be a robot. What the heck?
right?
What the
I'm supposed to
hell?
be an
You're doing it
emotionless
wrong.
robot.
Come on.
How dare you? Oh my god. We say that with all love, obviously.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And Ghost Hugs Incoming brought up a really good point. Mystic with another gift sub.
Oh, Petito. To Petito Nico.
Nico was a guest in our very first podcast where we talked about with Oozeworm as well. So I'm so glad that Nico now has a subscription as well. So very kind. Thank you so much, Mystic. We are 1 sub away from 10. I have never had this many subs in my life, ever. This is so overwhelmingly so kind. I am like, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much.
It's happening.
I'm broken. I've been broken. Not because I'm ace, but I've been broken by the subs.
Not because I'm ace is ridiculous.
That'll be a short, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Not because I'm ace, mind you.
Just drinking generally.
That's
Nothing to do with asexuality.
Just in general.
Oh,
Ta-da!
What?
Congrats
10?
on 10. Congrats.
And you are now. Oh, thank you so much, Babes. And Sleepy Bunny has now been welcomed to the sub club. Thank you so much, Mabes. Thank you so much. I've never had 10 subs in my life.
Aw.
You all have been too kind today. Thank you so much.
I would give you a hug,
Aw.
but I'm not in a hug mood, so I'll
Yeah,
just.
that's so valid.
I'll give you a pat on the back. Pat, pat, pat.
Aw, thank you. I'm broken.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
And not because of the ace.
No,
okay?
not because of
Or the arrowness.
No, not because I'm arrow ace. No, not at all. But because of all the subs.
Yeah. No. You deserve. You're a sweetie for putting this together anyway.
Aw, thank you so much. And it has been so wonderful to chat with so many people and get all these different perspectives about asexuality and aromanticism, and that's the most important part. It is such a diverse community, so we need to show the diversity within the representation.
Yes, more voices, always more voices.
Absolutely.
More
I do want to
voices.
circle back. Ghost Hugs Incoming did mention something, really interesting, and they mentioned the quote future partner being the faceless man, because they grew up assuming they would have a partner that they cohabitated with who would prioritize the what I call capital R relationship. And that is very much true for me, thinking, yeah, I'm going to have the future, the future wife, faceless wife, I guess. And, the capital R relationship. Now I realize that none of that's true. And that's more authentically me. Yes, it feels like a sense of loss, but also at the same time, I've realized more authentically what I want. And I would say that I'm the happiest I've ever been in coming to that realization, because now I don't have to worry about whether or not I'll ever meet those expectations of society. I can just say, who cares? Screw society's expectations.
And honestly, like, obviously y'all know, but everybody in chat too, like, being in an unhappy relationship is never better than being happy while you're alone and single. Or I don't even want to say alone and single, I'm being untethered.
Oh, absolutely.
But I feel like there's so many people that are like, well, it's better than being alone. Why? How?
Why would you want to be unhappy in a relationship just to meet some bizarre, arbitrary societal expectations?
Exactly. Especially like if it's a relationship where the person doesn't acknowledge your
Yeah.
Yeah,
sexuality or your wants or your needs or anything like well,
exactly. And we're going to be talking about this in an upcoming episode.
to be
Looking at,
continued.
yeah, exactly. Looking at applying uh, relationship anarchy to from an ace and arrow lens, and thinking about how can something like relationship anarchy inform any sort of relationship. And this is
Mhm.
something that I've talked a lot about with the discussion group here locally. And I think there will have some really interesting things to talk about with regards to that. But definitely, I will write it in chat. Look up Andy Nordgren, uh, a short instructional manifesto on relationship anarchy.
Non-partnering. I've heard that one too. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't like to I don't know. I don't know how I feel about non-partnering. I feel like it's not a cute word.
I can appreciate that.
I like cute words like gay or like untethered sounds fancy.
Untethered relationship. That's amazing.
Yeah. Or like they're like, "Oh my god, did you find a girlfriend? I'm untethered."
Yeah.
Ate them up. They would be so mad. Oh, you're tethered? Oh, I'm untethered. I feel like I don't know. I like to make it fun like that because why
Of
not? Like,
course.
there's so after decades of people being like, "Oh, you're gonna be single forever." Okay.
Oh well, who
Actually,
cares?
I'm untethered,
Yeah,
so I'm quite happy. I'm gone with the winds.
exactly.
What about
Mystic
change?
said what about change?
That's a different kind of ace. That's a
Absolutely.
bro.
There's a lot of kink. There's
Yeah,
and
there's yeah.
Duke giving the
Yeah.
sub to Jessica.
Oh,
Yay!
thanks.
Yay! I was trying to give one, but I forgot your name.
That's
Like
fair.
your like other name. Your what is it called?
Uh
Your
Handle?
gamer
Channel, yeah.
handle, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
And
deep cut, I
absolutely,
know.
actually, this could be a whole topic on its own and actually might be one to explore, but there is a huge
Huge BDS.
amount of
Yeah.
kink in the asexual community.
That's why
And I
I
think,
said we're monster fucker.
yes, absolutely. And I think, that's a really good one to explore as a future topic is kink in the asexual community and what kink actually means
Yeah.
for ace folks.
Yep.
Because there's a
Yep.
lot of misunderstanding around it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember when I was first like looking into everything, I was like, but I like fake fictional men, but I like this, but I like that. And the word asexual fetishist came up. I have stuck by that to this day.
Absolutely. Duke
To this
with the
day.
sub to Penguin Top Hat.
Oh my
You
goodness.
are
Duke just got
breaking me today. I am now at 12 subs. I started the day at 2
Aw.
subs. And because of all the amazing kindness, I now have 12 sub points. I may have actually unlocked a new. I think I've definitely unlocked at least one or two new emote slots, and I'm going to have to start thinking about some new emotes because of all the amazing kindness.
I
Thank you
vote
so,
for
so
a
much.
penguin.
Yeah.
Wait, do penguins live in the Arctic that you
Yeah.
study?
No,
Okay, cool.
penguins are in the Antarctic. Penguins are in the
But
Antarctic.
wait, which ones are in the ones you study?
Polar bears.
Polar bears. I vote for polar bear emotes. We want to be accurate.
Yeah. Ooze mentioned, that kink is covered under the agosexual microlabel.
Yeah.
Or aego as I like to pronounce it, because it's a lack of self.
Yeah, it's like outside of yourself.
Exactly. But I'm not sure if all aces that perform kink are necessarily aego. That would be something to look into, because I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good topic for sure, because there's so much to talk about, and too much to talk about today for sure with regards to kink.
Yeah, we'd be here for another 4 hours.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I do have to start to get ready soon because I'm heading out to meet some folks for dinner in about an hour and a half.
What are you gonna
So,
eat?
we are gonna go grab some Korean food, maybe some Korean
Ooh.
noodles, I think.
Ooh. That
Looking
sounds
forward to
good.
it.
Sure.
And I've had so much fun today. Unfortunately, I think because of the time, we might be needing to wrap up here soon. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to bring forward at this point? It's been so much fun today for so many reasons. I've had such a wonderful chat. Thank you all so much for chatting about your experiences with intersectionality, because this is something I've wanted to explore and talk about for a long time, but haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah, I
Thank
just
you for
want to say thank you
inviting
for
us.
doing it. Yes, for
Yeah.
putting on this whole series and inviting us to
Yeah.
chat. I think that it's a
Absolutely.
really important to get more voices in the conversation. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you for inviting us. And thank you for I feel like you really work strongly um in the Aero Ace space, and I appreciate that as well.
I've enjoyed doing it. The work that I do with the Ace and Arrow discussion group, I have to say I actually enjoy more than my own PhD work. Maybe that's saying something.
Yeah.
Um,
I wish it'd be so. This I feel like there should be like a sex education course just run by
yeah,
Arrow
you
Ace
think?
Oh,
individuals
hell yeah.
because
Hell
I
yeah.
That'd
feel
be
like we
great.
would be the best. First of all, as speaking on the topic without any like weirdness.
Yes.
Um, but also I just think like we think about it so much.
Yep.
Like because
Mhm.
like I said, because sex is attached to asexual, we do think about both things often. So
Mhm.
I feel like we would be the most educated on this topic.
Totally. Absolutely. I
Yes. Have a
totally
good
agree.
dinner.
Thank you
Have a
so
good
much.
dinner.
I would like to give both of you a chance to plug your socials one last time. Do you, just, remind us what your socials are, where we can find you, and, you know, just, briefly summarize, I guess, whatever you'd like, in closing here. Start with you, Jessica.
Yeah, I don't really do a lot of work on like content creation or anything like
Yeah,
that. I'm just sort of,
You're just awesome.
I'm just here. I'm just here. I'm just here. But on the internet, I do exist with the username that you see here, EWERPOINT,
Mm-mm.
which is to your point. It's a pun. I swear it makes sense, but it's fine. But yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about it more. I think that representation is super important, and so just trying to continue to open up the conversation a little bit more is really important to me. So thanks for having me on.
absolutely. And
Yay!
do you want to remind us of your socials and where we can find you, Mapes?
Yes. Yeah, you can find me Mabel Luna, twitch.tv, right? And then basically everywhere I'm Mabel Luna. If you can't find me under Mabel Luna, it's probably Mabel Luna VT, like VTuber. Um, yeah, it's I'm so happy to be here. I love everybody
Absolutely.
from the Arrow Ace Raid
It
Train,
has
and
been
so
so lovely meeting
yeah,
all the wonderful people from the Aero Ace Raid Train. And
yeah.
it's been so wonderful to keep in touch with everybody from it. And Duke gifting the
Oh,
sub to Mabes.
me! Yay!
Thank you so, so much.
Yeah, I feel like anytime you ever want to talk about anything, or even if like you're just doing a Pokemon like Nuzlocke or something, and you want me to
Absolutely.
watch, always invite me. Like for
Absolutely.
anybody, Ace, I'm like, literally tell me where and I'll be there.
Absolutely. Most of my
Yeah.
Pokemon stuff is over on the YouTubes.
Oh,
So I'll plug my YouTube here.
heck yeah! All the plugs.
Absolutely. Thank you so, so much to Duke for absolutely like I don't even know how many subs Duke has gifted today. Is it 10? I think Duke
It's
gifted
probably
10.
10. Yeah,
Uh,
probably
Ma-
10.
uh Mystic gifted 2, and I know that you gifted 1 as well. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. We are going to go on a raid here, and it's going to be, the raid message will be Aspec podcast raid with Taiwai. I don't know, how do you pronounce it? Is it Ewer Point? I don't know your D&D
Yeah.
name.
Yep.
And Mabeluna. So
Yes,
there's
yes,
the
yes.
raid message. If you want to copy and paste that, we are going to be raiding the folks that are the streamer that Sleepy Bunny recommended.